Greetings, it is I, Dawn of the Dead from Nunslaughter, and I'll see you at the Tampa Morgue.
What's up? This is Tony, and you're listening to the Tampa Morgue, episode number 31. As always, I'm joined by my co-host, Mr. Ed Webb. What's up, dude?
Mr. Anderson, what's going on, brother?
Nothing much, man. How you doing?
I'm good. Tired, man. I had a long night last night, but we will talk about that on another episode.
Yes, we'll talk about it.
You're very excited for this episode.
Yeah,
I've been hearing about it for days.
I've been pumped up about this one, man. We opened the show with the track Raid the Convent from the 2003 GOAT album from Nunslaughter. And tonight's guest, I actually interviewed about 20 years ago twice for a magazine I worked for out of Tampa called The Rivet Rag. And I can honestly say for my bands and Ed's bands, he was a big influence on me at my teenage years because I was just putting out anything, man. I was just putting out CDs, demos of my band. Some I wish I'd never put out now. Like when I go back, I'm like, I wish I never put that shit out. But this guy that we have tonight was a big influence of that because whoever knows Nunslaughter knows there is a shitload of releases. But we are joined tonight by the one and only Dawn of the Dead. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great, man. Thank you so much for the interview. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, we really appreciate you coming on. Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's funny, Don. I don't know, you might remember this or not, but back in 2003, we did a public access show in Tampa, and I had actually contacted you, and the opening song was Thou Art in the Kingdom of Hell. And the show was called Hell's Gate. It was a public access. We only lasted a very small amount of time. But I remember we had a string to the fence and we pulled the gate open, and that was the intro song, So, yeah, it was, I think you can still actually find the intro on YouTube. I believe it's still on there. So, but yeah, I think it was right when it was beyond Hell's Gate and up to the tower, the gate would actually creep open. Totally cheesy it was when we had that with the fence. But yeah, totally excited to talk to you tonight. So, man, you're actually from Carnegie, Pennsylvania?
Yeah, that's, I think I was born in Bridgeville, or I'm not really sure, but close to Carnegie. Yeah.
Was that 6 miles out of
just outside of Pittsburgh?
Just outside of Pittsburgh. Okay. And as a kid, at that young age, what was it like growing up in that area for you?
Well, it wasn't like growing up in the city, it wasn't like growing up in Brooklyn or something like that. It's, so we had to venture out of the town or the community to go and get metal music. And there were never any like shows. In fact, I didn't really know of any hard rock, heavy metal bands in the Carnegie area. Um, so it kind of, I don't want to say sheltered, but it wasn't the city. So we didn't get a lot, it was just regular Aussie, Judas Priest, Iron Maiden type of music, that was accessible.
Yeah, and you were raised in a Christian home until like what, 13? I had read.
Yeah, well, my mom, geez, long story short, I guess, when my dad died when I was 7, and we were very, very poor. This is before there were a lot of social programs. So my mom, being in good standing with the church, went to the church and says, "Hey, I can't afford to put clothes on my kids or feed them. Can we get some help?" And kind of their response was like, uh, "God will take care of you," which she said, fuck the church after that.
That was the end of
and
that.
but she felt it was a good idea to have us go to church. So she used to drop us off at uh, CCD classes. I don't even know what it stands for, but like you go in on Sundays and they teach you about the Bible and this kind of shit. And then at 13, you get confirmed by the church as an actual member of the church. And I remember coming out of my confirmation ceremony, getting in the car, and my mom said, "It's up to you. If you want to keep going, I'll take you. If not, you don't have to go." And I said, "I don't want to go." And that was it. Yeah, she kind of had enough with the church, like years before I was done.
And I remember reading something with you years ago where you had said, which, and I can relate to this because I had to go to the same thing. I was a Catholic school when I was a kid and stuff. And you were obsessed with the stories about Satan and evil. And I remember this too. Like those were the most exciting stories about those tales they would tell you. And that really influenced you. That pretty much was the thing the only thing that you really enjoyed about going there. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, early, boy, I guess this was probably 83. Like Peace of Mind. Like in the back when it talks like Revelations. Revelations is like kind of the neatest book, at least as a kid sitting there bored out of his mind, and just the neat stories. And then I just thought that was the best parts of the Bible were the stories of the cannibalism, the incest, the murder, the rape. I was like, these are all great stories, and that's parts that they don't necessarily teach you. They teach you all the love and milk and honey kind of bullshit, but there's all these like fucking awful stories in the Bible, and yeah, so those are the ones that kind of attracted me to those types of stories, kind of the evil of man.
Yeah, and I thought it was really cool. I heard something with you where you had said that not to jump ahead too much, but related to music wise, you had read an interview with Jeff from Possessed, and he basically said what basically bands either sing about Satan or death. We sing about both, and that was something that stuck with you, right?
Oh, totally. Yeah. In fact, I told him that we did a tour with Possessed in December, and actually, the "Thou Art in the Kingdom of Hell" off the Goat record, Jeff Becerra wrote all those lyrics for that song,
Mm-hmm.
and was it 2000 or something like that. But anyway, I got to spend quite a bit of time with him, and yeah, that was one of my favorite things I ever read in an interview, and it was probably somewhere in 89, 90. I don't remember the zine, but yeah, he said, death metal bands can sing about either death or Satan, and we choose to sing about both. And I just thought that was fucking great. So,
That is great. Yeah. So, and you also went to a small school, right? And in '84, you were taking graphic art classes, right? And yeah, there was another student there named Terry Westwood. Um, is it the same Terry Westwood that played bass in the Pittsburgh band Weapons of Violence?
I don't think so. I don't think he ever played an instrument. I could be wrong, but I don't recall him ever mentioning that he was, played guitar or bass or anything like that in a band. But yeah,
And
Terry was a guy that kind of started making me mixtapes of all these bands I never heard of, and kind of guided me to go to a record store in Pittsburgh called Ides Records and Entertainment. It's still there now. It's changed I think three times since I started going. But yeah, what a great independent record! It's kind of our Pittsburgh's Amoeba Records, or
Okay.
Rasputin Records out in California. So, yeah.
And what, you were taking a bus there, right? You were taking like 2 different buses there, I had heard, and like I
Oh
think
yeah, Mom was pissed. Like,
yeah,
oh geez, because again, I think back, like, how was such a young kid? I was even going into Pittsburgh before that. I just didn't know about this record store, and yeah, I got busted a few times, but because I'm standing there at the bus stop, and then like either my mom or like one of my mom's friends drives by, and they're like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, and get home, It's like, oh shit. But yeah, it's simple. I mean, I got $2 a day for lunch, uh, so I'd have $10 at the end of the week, and then at the time, records were $6.99, so it was enough money to go in on the bus, buy a record, and come home. And that's kind of what I just didn't eat lunch, or I was a scavenger. So somebody didn't want to finish their peanut butter and jelly sandwich, I'd eat a third of that, and then I'd eat some carrots, and I'd eat have this, and so I didn't have to buy lunch, and I could save my $2 and go buy a record.
yeah, and you, before that, you were like what, listening to the basics like Black Sabbath, AC/DC, Priest. You were even like listening to like Elvis and Zappa and Kiss, right, at that time. I know Kiss was pretty big band with you.
Yeah, so not Zappa. I didn't start listening to Zappa probably until the maybe early 90s, 91, 92. I got into him when I was in college. But yeah, my mom, her records were Little Richard, Chuck Berry, Elvis Presley. And then my dad's records that my mom never got rid of, he was more along the lines of Motown, the Supremes, Temptations, Otis Redding, that kind of music. So those are the records we had in the house. And yeah, it wasn't until it was probably mid to late 70s, I guess, probably 78, 79, when I heard Kiss. And I'd have to say my first record ever was double platinum. And
Okay, I was going to ask you about that.
I bought that at a record at a store called Zares, and it was $8.88 because it was a double album. So it was like it cost a lot of money.
Yeah,
And
back then that
so
was.
I had to save up extra for that. But my mom was there at the mall when I bought that, and because there's nothing offensive on that, on the cover or anything, so it wasn't a problem. But yeah, that was my first record, first LP that I ever bought myself was.
Okay, and your first arena show was actually the Bark at the Moon tour with Ozzy, Motley Crue, and Wasted.
And Wasted, yeah, that was 84. So
Shout at the Devil for Motley Crue was that time period?
That was Shout at the Devil, yeah. It was so I'd have to say at the time I was probably just as big a Motley Crue fan as I was of Ozzy. So I couldn't believe, and I still have the ticket stub, $13.50 to see Motley Crue and Ozzy Osbourne. And
I wanted to ask you about that. Those first 2 Motley Crue records. I mean, as when I was a kid, Too Fast for Love and Shout at the Devil, I love those records, and I started seeing the imagery. Of course, when I was that young, it's pretty impressionable at that time period.
Yeah, what got me was I didn't hear of Motley Crue until Shout at the Devil, and I started seeing them in magazines, and of course, they're spitting blood. They got pentagrams. They're lighting themselves on fire. All the kind of the theatrics that Moore was known for, say, like Alice Cooper, because I got into Welcome to My Nightmare as well when I got that. And, he's hanging himself and all.
Yeah, I'm a huge Cooper guy.
Great. And then I found out they had an album before that, before Speak of the Devil or Shout at the Devil. So yeah, I got into them right around. It was probably 84. Yeah.
Because I know I know you're a punk guy too, and if you listen to Too Fast for Love, it kind of had that. I mean, for that time period, it was kind of a punkish thing going on with that record compared to the second record. Because Shout at the Devil was much heavier, I guess you'd say.
Yeah, it was a lot warmer sounding, but I like Vince Neil's voice, especially on Too Fast for Love. Is it like a really high register?
Yeah.
So it's like it's not necessarily good, but it really fit their music, at least for me.
Yep.
And then later on, I got early Motley Crue demos, and his voice is even higher than it is on Too Fast for Love. And
That Shout at the Devil demo. That Shout at the Devil demo. And he, even at the end of the Shout at the Devil, the song when he starts doing the whatever he's bantering I remember I thought it was badass when I was like probably like 13 or 12. The original demo. But yeah, and so that was the Bark at the Moon. And your first punk show was Black Flag at City Limits.
It was the first one that I remember like going to, and that was sometime in '84 as well. I'm pretty sure it was '84, maybe '85. But I was a fan of Black Flag, but I never went to, at that time I hadn't gone to a where there's a mosh pit and kids stage diving or anything. And when I went, and then again, this is before obviously like YouTube and shit, so I never saw videos of these punk bands. And me and my buddy Paul went, and I was blown away. I mean, just the sheer energy and just how pissed off the whole vibe of Black Flag. And so I immediately just started stage diving, getting in the pit and everything. And kind of knew that was what I wanted to. Those are the kind of shows I wanted to go to, rather than the big punk rock or the big arena shows. Like, granted, I enjoyed seeing Ozzy and Motley Crue, and I've seen Judas Priest and Metallica and all this stuff, but I like the visceral feeling of getting in the pit. At least I did when I was, 15.
Yeah, exactly. I was wondering if that was the same tour where they played with, because they played with Painted Willie and a band called Gone, and they had played this. I don't know if it was, but that might have been '86, because they had played City Gardens in Jersey, where I'm from, and actually they played with Venom and Overkill at the show, which I was too young to go to. But it's actually a historic show, because I guess like Venom and Black Flag were getting into it or some shit like that. There was some kind of thing going on there, but I was wondering if that was the same tour. But
no, because I don't remember. I can honestly say I don't remember the support bands at all. But I probably the bands that you just mentioned, Gone and the other one, they don't sound familiar to me.
Okay, and so when you were going to that record store, right? That's where you started seeing flyers for like shows, like smaller shows, right? Like local shows in the area.
Yeah, correct. Trying to remember how it was probably 85, 86 when I met. I saw flyers and went to a couple of shows at the Electric Banana, which was kind of our CBGB's type of. Any punk band coming through Pittsburgh played the Electric Banana, and a lot of metal bands too. But how I kind of got into the music scene was I went to one of these shows. I can't remember what show it was, local show or something. And a guy came up to me. His name's Ted Williams, and he was in a band called Dream Death from Pittsburgh. Mm-hmm. And they had just put out a demo, and or they were planning on putting out a demo. And he said, "Hey, we're playing our first show in 2 weeks or something. If you like Doom and Celtic Frost, you should come to the show." And so I got my mom to drop us off at the show, and I met Ted and became friends with him. And at this time I was probably 15, maybe a little old. I'm not sure, but 15, 16. And he just started inviting me over to the after party shows at his apartment in Pittsburgh. So I started going there, and that's where I met the guys from Doomwatch and Necropolis and Half-Life. Those were kind of the big four of Pittsburgh in the mid '80s.
You also met a guy named Stump there, right? Who actually got you into collecting?
Yeah, he. Again, I don't remember what zine it was, maybe Blackthorn or something. I'm flipping through, and they had a section of like it just called like demos, or it was called Demolition or something like that. And so as I'm reading, I'm like, oh, never heard of this band, and so he started talking to me. He started telling me about demos, and I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And that's when he started giving me demo tapes, just again like a mixtape of all these demos of bands that I've never heard of, and it started me down that path. And my other buddy Greg, who I started Nunslaughter with, same kind of thing. He just got enveloped. It just started like hearing all these bands that never had record contracts or didn't have record contracts at the time, and started collecting and trading demos.
Was your first? I have to ask you this because I saw that. Was your first demo the Phantom Warrior, which was from Union, New Jersey?
Yes,
that
yeah,
the
that
band?
was the first
really?
one.
Okay, Morbid Invasion demo, right? That's what is that? 86. Okay, I was wondering if that was the Union, New Jersey band.
86, because I think they put out another one in 86 called. Was it Falling from the? No, that's Hatred. That was another great band from New Jersey, Hatred.
Yeah.
Drowning in Afterbirth demo, and then they put out a second or third one called Falling from the Sky. It wasn't quite as extreme. But yeah, Phantom Warrior, Morbid Invasion was my first demo I ever bought.
Yeah, power thrash. I remember. Yeah, that was God. Yeah, so that was your first demo, and so that started your collecting though, because you know that really started kicking it off for you.
Yeah, again, I didn't have a lot of means to buy demos, so Greg and I kind of teamed up when we would get a fanzine, just a photocopied fanzine. We'd go over each other's houses, and he'd mark, okay, he's going to get this one, and I'm like, okay, well, I'll get this one, and then he's like, okay, I'll get this one, and then we sent out for these demos, and when we get them in, we go over each other's houses and dub them for each other, trade the demos, and then that started our list, and then we started trading with other people around the world.
Okay, and then at the same time, for 85, you became involved in your first band, which was Death Sentence, right, with Jerry Jameson. How did that all start up? Basically, was that just like schoolmates, or how'd you meet those guys?
Boy, music scene in Pittsburgh. So many people from the outskirts of Pittsburgh would come to the Electric Banana for shows, and I can't tell you how I even met Jerry Jameson, but we became really good friends. He was jamming in a band called Bird of Prey, or they were planning on doing Bird of Prey, something along those lines. And the other guitar player,
Greg
Natali, he was also playing with Jerry, and Jerry was more of a drummer. So he was drumming in Bird of Prey and in Death Sentence. And so we did, we had probably maybe a dozen rehearsals, and it just kind of was bad music. And we kind of wanted to do something more heavy and satanic. So.
Was that the first time you picked up the bass? Because what got you picking up the bass at first? Because I know in that time you were doing vocals, but you also were fucking around with the bass also early on.
Yeah, it would have been somewhere around 86, probably middle of 86, when we decided to not do Death Sentence, and that's actually kind of where Greg Beale enters the scene, because it seemed like Greg and I were always missing each other. So we had mutual friends, and they were all like, they would tell Greg, "Hey, you got to meet Dawn," and then they would tell me, "You got to meet Greg." And for some reason, we just kept missing each other, like at shows, or this is before cell phones and shit. And then all of a sudden, we met up, and we were on the same page with the kind of metal or death metal that we liked, and that's when we started talking about doing a death metal band. And in my rearview mirror was kind of the Death Sentence stuff. So I was thinking, like, well, let's talk to Jerry, because we were talking about doing something, and Jerry wanted to play guitar. He was more of a drummer. He's still is a drummer. He's a very good drummer, but he wanted to play guitar, and like I didn't want to sing, and Greg was just like, "Well, I don't want to learn an instrument, so I'll sing." And I was like, "Great!" And then my friend Ted Williams from Dream Death again, he just said, "Well, hey, I have an old bass. You can have my bass." And I was like, well, "I guess I'm going to be the bass player." So that's kind of.
And you guys did put out a demo, right, with Death Sentence. You actually re-released that in 2010, Before the Slaughter on 7-inch. It got released again. That was actually a Death Sentence demo?
Yeah, it was a death sentence. Yes and no. It was a demo. We had the artwork. We never actually manufactured any or even did like tape dubs. It was planning on being. It was boombox recording for what we're going to go in and do. Hopefully in a studio or like a decent recording. And like I said, the band just kind of crumbled. I remember the one like band meeting we had because like we kept listening to the songs. And we're like, these songs kind of like suck. We're trying to figure out how to write songs. We don't know. And uh, the guy Greg playing guitar, he was trying to restructure the songs and it was getting all convoluted. Like I couldn't figure out where the song was supposed to be going and rearranging stuff. And it was kind of after that one. And I remember it. I remember sitting there like this song is. I'm fucking confused. And that's when Jerry and I, like once Greg left, we were like, we gotta get rid of this dude. We gotta make some death. Like we want it like simple, something like the structure I can understand. And that's kind of what led us to creating Nunslaughter.
And you were only 16 when you formed Nunslaughter, which is pretty crazy. I mean, that you've done it that long, first of all, because I know, we'll talk about all that, but you're only 16 years old when you created that band.
Yeah, it's 16. So, what's a couple of months? I don't really remember. I know it was I was in college when the demo came out. So that was 87 because I had to go home and pick up tapes to bring them up to school so I could mail them out from my dorm room. Yeah, so
you guys had so you had you, Greg, you had Jerry, and you also, where did you find the drummer? What was it, Scott Phillips?
Scott, and it was actually Bill played on. I want to say Bill, this guy Bill. He played on. I want to say 3 of the songs, and then the other track, I think Scott played on it. So it's kind of like whatever guy in the band you ask, because we can't remember who played on the track that we actually put out on the demo. We just nobody remembered what take we used, and the other takes are just gone. So, but yeah, I'd have to. I mean, last time I saw Bill about maybe a decade ago, and he assured me that was him playing on all of them, and I'm like, I thought it was Scott too, but I don't know. Yeah, that's so long ago.
So you mentioned 87. About that time, I know you were into a lot of the demos, right? You were into the Mantis demos. Massacre demos were out that time period. I know Cam Lee was a big influence on you back in the day. Jeff from Possessed, obviously. So you were listening to that. Were you a fan of the Amon demos? Because I know that, first of all, I do know you're not a Morrisound fan of those recordings. But were you a fan of the Feasting the Beast demo or any of that?
I honestly never heard that until maybe 8 years ago. I just didn't even know the band existed. It never came across my plate. I guess they were about 80. Were they about 87, 86, 87?
Yeah, I think 87 that demo came out, I believe.
Yeah, so it was just a matter of it never popped up on my radar or on my trade list, or if it did, I didn't recall it.
And you were also a fan, which I actually thought he was amazing on you were Browning fan when it comes to Morbid Angel years, right? 84, 86, you were a fan of the Browning's vocals.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. The Abominations has got more of a swing to it. It obviously doesn't really have what are considered like modern blast beats. It was fast drumming. It wasn't necessarily blast beats, I guess. And but I just like the swing to it. And frankly, I just got used to his voice and his drumming, and it was not to take anything away from Altars of Madness. It just really kind of wasn't the same band to me anymore. I listened to Abominations for so long, it kind of got stuck in my head that that's what it should sound like. Although
were you into the Nocturnus stuff at all, the key and stuff?
Yeah, not as much. I mean, again, I still liked Mike's vocals. But I'm not a real big fan of keyboards in death metal. But I wasn't so stringent back then. You know, I was kind of just taking it all in um, at the times. But now, modern me or older me, it just kind of, it's just, for me, it's distracting. I mean, I don't want to say it's nails on the chalkboard, because it's not necessarily that bad, but it's just kind of like, what's going on? Like, why don't they just play a guitar? It doesn't make any sense to me. But I will say this though, the Die Kingdom Come demo is probably the best death metal demo ever made. I mean, that's just over the freaking top.
Yeah, it's funny because I remember like when I would read your interviews when I was growing up, when I was younger, I would see it like like I said, you don't have like, I know things change. I remember reading like you didn't. I remember like leprosy and the altars. You were like, not my thing, and I was like, oh, back then, of course, I was like, oh shit, man, But now as you've aged, do you kind of like appreciate them more? Or is it still kind of the same thing with those? Because Iron Maiden, right, somewhere in time, you were done when that happened. Like that was pretty much it for you, right? That
Oh
time
yeah, the
period.
sing along stuff. I mean, and they're still doing great music. I don't thoroughly appreciate the sing along stuff. The whoa, whoa, that kind of. I don't care. But what people don't seem to realize or understand when, like even leprosy and Altars of Madness came out. For me, there was no reason for me to force myself to like those recordings, because there was 1,000 other bands that I could like out of the gate, like just their first album, or not even a first album, just demos. So, it has grown on me. I could say that, but I wouldn't spin it. I mean, it doesn't do anything for me.
Do you ever think like, here's a question for you that me and Ed have talked about on the show often, that do you find like, is it like a lot of the new bands, isn't it hard to process? Like you've heard so much music. It's like when I hear new bands, there's some bands that are good that I hear them and I'm like, this band is good, but is it hard to like, I always go back to the old records. I can't help it. Like, there's some stuff that I do like that comes out new, but do you find that for yourself also? Cause you've heard so much shit through the years. Like, is it hard for you to take in new bands and really actually like we always say there's what is it, Ed? There's a 2-week shelf life on a new record. It feels like these days, like back in the day, you would listen to a record, you constantly, now it's like they shove it down your throat for like a week or two, and then you don't hear about it again until the next release.
Right.
Do you find the same thing?
I agree with that. I guess music, at least for me, was a lot about time and place. And maybe it sounds stupid, but the record that you were listening to whenever the first time you got laid is probably one of your top records. Like it might be the crappiest thing ever. Like you go back and you're like, why did I like this? But all of a sudden you're just like, you know what? That Van Morrison song, man, Into the Mystic, I was getting blowjob from that. Great song, great album. Like you're gonna like it. And same
Poster
with some
on the
other,
wall.
Yeah, and same with some of the other metal records. You're sitting around with your buddies, around a fire. You're 15 years old, drinking beer, getting stoned, trying to hit on chicks, and you've got Leprosy playing. Well, that's going to be one of your favorite fucking records for the rest of your life, because it's going to transport you back to sitting in front of that fire, drinking beer, getting stoned, trying to get laid. It's just how it is. And for me, by that time, like that record came out, I was 2 years in college already. So, and so it didn't mean that much to me. Plus, I was just always like, there's other demos that I could listen to of bands that aren't out. Kind of like, and not necessarily wholly, but it's kind of like, you start off buying the demos, supporting the band, talking to people, spreading the demo around. The band gets a record deal. You kind of lifted them up out of obscurity, and then you just send them on their way, let other people discover them. And then I turn around and I go to the next band that's only got a demo out or just formed, and they're jamming, and I'm like, let me hear your music. Okay. And then I start wearing a t-shirt, passing out stickers, buttons, flyers, telling people about it, trading that demo. Then that band gets lifted up and they go on to do a record deal. Then you turn around and you get another band. So that's how I kind of justify. I don't really listen to that many bands' records. I have a lot of demos, but most of the stuff I don't I had at one point before I sold my records, my record collection. I didn't even own one valid like LP. I didn't own Black Sabbath, Paranoid. I didn't own Judas Priest, Screaming for Vengeance. I didn't own any. All I had were bootlegs and picture discs. So and there was like 600 plus bootlegs that I had, and I ended up just getting rid of them. But I didn't have any like legitimate albums. Like somebody say, "Hey,
Wow.
do you like Don't Break the Oath?" And it's like, well, I got like 7 live shows from that album. Yeah, I like the album. You're like, do you own it? I don't own Don't Break the Oath. I just didn't.
Well, you mentioned something too a couple minutes ago that with the seeing the band shirts and stuff, and how many times, like when you're in high school and stuff, before there was no internet, there was no, I mean, there was none of this shit. You would buy a record or buy a magazine, and a lot of times you would see the shirt and you would go find the band. Like it was, it was totally different than now. I mean,
Chuck had the Sadist shirt. People who learned who Sadist was by Chuck.
Yeah.
Or he wore the other shirt. I forget who the other band he used to push was. Dark Angel. He used to wear the Dark Angel shirt, and people found out who they were because they were underground at that point. It's crazy.
He also wore Dangerous Toys t-shirt.
Yeah.
We're not going to talk about that.
Well,
so and
we didn't say it was perfect.
Before we go back to Nunslaughter, you were not a fan of the Morrisound records, right? It was just not your thing back then.
It just wasn't my thing. Like I never really took to a lot of like Sunlight Studios music.
Mm-hmm.
Again, opinions are like assholes. Everybody's got one.
Yep.
It's not that the music was bad or anything. It just, for me, other than World Downfall, a lot of the production sound that studios would put out, and especially the Morrisound stuff, because I read a little bit excerpts of Scott Burns' book. He was saying this is a new style of music. He doesn't really know what he's doing, but he put out an album, and then other bands liked that sound that he brought to it, and so they just kept going to him. And again, it's not like it's terrible. And on a kind of a side note, that soundboard that was at Morrisound Studios is now in Cleveland, Ohio.
I was going to mention that. Yeah, Noah bought it, right? Off of Rattan.
Noah's studio. So, oddly enough, we might be recording the next record off that.
I was thinking of that before I asked this question tonight. I was like, wait a second. I'm like, I'm going to bring this up, and I know that Noah picked up from Rattan. I was like, so that's a whole other thing. But
look at this fucking hypocrite. I'm like, hey.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah. But yeah, and we're going to go back to Nunslaughter in a second, but I want to, and actually you brought up something that I wanted to ask you, because one thing about with you as a front man, you pretty much always said as you felt. A lot of guys didn't do that back then. There was a few, like we know King from Deceased always said what he feels and stuff, but how do you feel about like these bands, like you mentioned World Downfall, like with Terrorizer and stuff? Like, how do you feel about not even Terrorizer, but the bands that the lineups change so much now, where it's like, there's just, I don't know. I'm trying to think of the right word to say it, Ed, without burning, like pissing people off. But now there's a lot of bands that are like kind of super groups coming out and touring and stuff like that all over the place. And it's kind of like, doesn't feel like, sometimes it just feels like, I'm not saying it's always a money grab, but do you feel that it's a lot of it is a money grab basically at the end of the day?
I mean, I'm sure it is. One of my big pet peeves is, and granted, Nunslaughter's had, I don't know, we probably had 35 different members over the years. But one of my big pet peeves is having a band with no original members. I don't know why people would want to go and see that. And I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm saying I wouldn't be interested in seeing it. And also, there's a lot of bands that the main songwriter leaves, and then granted, maybe the new guitarist that they get in is a phenomenal guitar player. He's got lots and lots of riffs, but he's not writing like the last guitar player who died, the main songwriter. And you're kind of like, wow, that's really, it's kind of a strange thing. I mean, look, for instance, the New Massacre music, it's very good metal, but other than Cam Lee, it doesn't sound like Massacre to me because of Rick Ross had a very unique and
Distinct sound.
distinct way of playing guitar.
Right.
But I talked to Cam about it, and it's by design. Like he doesn't want to be associated. I don't know about associated, but he wants to make a break from the Rick Ross Massacre stuff to the new Massacre stuff. And if you listen to it as just a death metal record, it's a very good record. Resurgence. I mean, it's better than that Massacre Promise. I mean, we know that. So,
yeah, and Ed knows because Ed was the vocalist on the last. He was the one on the last record before Cam restruck it up. So yeah, the whole.
Yeah. Didn't you also do? You did. What else did you?
He did Diabolic. He did.
Oh yeah. I was gonna say
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, I did that.
He did that. He did yeah. So and now he's doing the Monstrosity. So it all comes around, But
playing every fucking band.
Yeah, it's when it's weird though. It's like I'm not saying, but I also don't know these days. Is it the only way for some bands to actually because we know this? It's just so fucked up now. Like I've been playing myself over 20 years, and it's just the whole thing is so crazy. The whole scene now, and the whole just the music industry in general. And that's one thing, Don, with Nunslaughter that I've always loved is. From day one, you guys never really gave a shit, right? About it was never a plan to pay your bills off the band. It just kind of like, if I remember correctly, you guys only when you first started, it was not like a full. You didn't think it was going to be a full-time thing. Was that true?
Correct. Yeah. I mean, we were just looking to do a death metal demo in Pittsburgh, and then, at that time, I think in everybody's lives, we had people that were. Graduating high school and going to college. Jerry went into the military. Greg Beal went ahead and got married. Everybody kind of went their separate ways after we recorded one demo. And we kind of just thought that, we're not going to do anything with this. And then sitting at school, it kind of at the time I was, Jerry and I were the main songwriters, and then I just started writing songs on my own, and got Jerry involved back for our second demo.
Because you were a big fan of Greg's vocals, I do know that. I've read you were a big fan of his vocals, and when you wrote the third demo, you wrote that demo with his vocals in mind, wasn't it?
Absolutely. I was just going to be the bass player, but Greg is very much a Pittsburgh guy, and he didn't like to travel, and I made arrangements to have a guy come in with a like a 16 track Tascam recorder to record at our where I was living in Clarion, where I was going to school. And I kind of I told Greg, hey, this is in 3 weeks you got to come up, and he's like, okay. And then I'm like, in 2 weeks you're coming up, and it's like, next week you're coming up, and he's just like, I don't think I want to drive up there. I'm like, well, I got a guy coming in, and so I had to. Everybody else was like, what are we going to do? I got a guy coming to set everything up. I was like, I guess I'll just sing. I got nothing. I don't have another person that could sing, so I landed the job of singing.
That's how it started. That's how it all started. When you guys were doing which I thought was a cool story. When you guys were doing Ritual of Darkness, so the song "I Am Death," right? That was actually a leftover song that you had laying around from Death Sentence that you didn't even realize was going to be brought to Practice, and then Jerry brought it to Practice.
Jerry brought it to Practice, and there were only lyrics, and I left them on a nightstand or something at his house, and it was it was first or second practice. Jerry came down, he just stood in front of the microphone, and he unfolded this manila sheet of paper that everybody used to write on, and he started playing. He's just like, I wrote this, the riffs, and he started singing, and I'm like, man, that's pretty good. This sound familiar. He's like, yeah, you left him at my house. So I was like, oh, that's our first song. We're already done, So yeah, he wrote all the music, and I wrote the lyrics, and that was the first song. It was an easy one.
And you guys did Ritual of Darkness. You did 3 different variants of that because you guys did a cover without the logo, correct? And then you guys did the cover with the logo on it for the cassette tapes.
Ides Records would sell your demo, kind of on consignment. $3 a piece is what it ran us back then. And but I didn't realize they were going to display the front of the demo, and on the front of the demo, I didn't have a logo. And again, the logo wasn't much; it was just me. I scribbled Nunslaughter, and it was on the spine because I thought they were going to have it in this tape case that you would just see the spine. And I go there, and it's just a picture of these little demons, and I'm like, well, nobody's going to buy that. So I don't know how many, maybe 15 or 20 of those tapes sold. And then when I remade the covers, I put the logo on the front. But yeah, that was
some old school shit.
Yeah.
That's some old school shit, man. That's how this whole thing started, right? Could you imagine if nobody ever traded demos or you never got demos?
Yeah, it would be.
You'd be nowhere.
I mean, yes, and I think some of my favorite music and maybe some of the world's favorite music would have never been heard because of how the record industry dealt with, especially like not only metal, but like death metal was like really looked down upon. Or I don't know if it was looked down upon, but it certainly wasn't talked about, or people weren't anxious to, or they weren't excited to put it out. Not bigger.
I know Ace's Records here.
Yeah, I've been there.
It was a fucking great place, man. That's where I learned because David Vincent worked there, and James Murphy worked there, and a couple of other, other band guys worked there that were influenced by or part of something, but without them going, hey, check this out, because a lot of times you see a name and you're like, I don't know what that means, but somebody like David Vincent, he's in Morbid Angel, and they point it out. You kind of gravitate toward it, and that's how. Plus, we had a place called the Sunset Club, and that's where the Amons, the Ravage, before they were Atheist, and Executioner, all the bands that are no longer called that. That's where they started, and that's where their demos came out. That's where he was talking about the Amon. We all had that, but nobody knew what an Amon was because they changed their name soon after.
Because of King Diamond, because they were on because of the
deicide. So, I mean, without the tape trading, I had a whole. There used to be a place called Splatter God Records, and I brought all my demos up there like an idiot, and they were gone. I mean, I was like, what did I do? Because you didn't realize later how
much they're going to be worth. It's ridiculous.
Or not even the money, just what it was. Because now I look back, because like you were saying, how maybe with Leprosy or pick a band that now you may not like it, or even you were talking about Morrisound, you like the raw sound. That's why Morrisound probably when it's polished kind of changes the whole dynamic of the band. But when they were raw, like Mantis, it just was, or even the early Massacre demos or pick a demo, like you were talking about Abominations, there was a rawness to it. But once they went in and did alters, not only did the playing change, but the sound. So that's why you like raw.
Yeah.
Which Nunslaughter's raw. I mean, to me, when I listen to Nunslaughter, I mean, it's still heavy, but it's got a raw sound compared to...
Especially the old demos.
Yeah, because I'm in Morrisound right now with Monstrosity. But the new Morrisound, not the old one, the new one. And, but I can hear, Lee's kind of he's kind of taking it old school. So it's not as super over the top, intricately have to have everything like, wrapped up in a basket. It's just old school.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Nunslaughter used to record, right? So you guys used to do, and you would record all your shows, right, and all your practices, so you would have things to release. Because you guys, obviously, which we'll talk about when Jim got involved in the band stuff, you guys started putting out a lot of releases, and you would actually record everything pretty much in the early days.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't super early. It was after, because when Jim joined the band, we didn't have before Jim joined the band, we didn't really have structured rehearsals ever. It was mainly just me writing and trying to teach either the guitar player or the drummer the songs, and then here comes the day to record. All right, this is the first time we're all here in the same room recording, and that's what it was. And again, we're pretty much all very poor musicians, so it was some long days. Like, I mean, that Rotting Christ demo, it was recorded in a garage in Latrobe, Pennsylvania, and that was like a a 14-hour day for me, because not only did I have to go and get the Tascam recorder, I had to go and pick up the drummer, driving outside an hour outside of Pittsburgh, dick around all day trying to figure out how to not only work the recorder but record something, and then I had to pack everything back up, drive his ass back to where he was living. I think it was Belle Vernon, and then go back. And it was like a 15-hour day for me. I was like, because we were all terrible musicians.
Well, you mentioned that Rotting Christ demo too, right? So the intro of that, was that you guys, was Hellhammer and a Sepultura intro like in reverse?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was my stupid idea, but we needed I thought we needed an intro, and we just didn't have any other better ideas. And I wanted to connect us with some of these bands that that we liked, or we wanted to be associated with. So yeah, probably the first maybe 30 or 40 cassettes had intro and outro on them. Was it Sepultura and Hellhammer? I mean, I don't remember, because after I put it out, people would ask me questions like, you know what, it is stupid. So I cut it off the demo.
So, because you were doing back 87, you were doing 75% of the layouts for all your stuff, right? Pretty much. That's what you do at Nunslaughter. You did a lot of the layouts. And when it comes to the band name, so I had read that you guys, basically it was like after a gig, you were out in the parking lot with a couple of buddies, and you kind of just would throw, and you guys were trying to find the 2-word name, right? I guess the Morbid Angel.
Morbid Angel was the big inspiration, because what a great name. I mean, it's just a great death metal band name, So
you guys just started tossing it around.
It was me, Greg, and I'm pretty sure Jerry was there, because we didn't really have a drummer when we were forming the band, and we took a nod from Morbid Angel, 2 words that shouldn't necessarily go together, that sounded like a good band name, and just started throwing out different names that were, we're all giggling and laughing like, whatever, that's funny, stupid. And then somebody, we don't know who, said Nunslaughter, and we kind of all stopped laughing, and we were like, yeah, let's do that. And it was very, I guess there was a lot of thought to put into it, but it seemed like a good band name.
Yeah, and I had heard you say, which I totally agree with, that you have these bands. There's you go onto the whatever it is, the encyclopedia pages, and there's 65 of the same band name. How do people do that? That's what's it's crazy, and it's there'll be 16 whatever Massacre, 16 this, 16 that. It's what the fuck, man?
Yeah, with a slight spelling.
Obviously the really good band names are taken. Death, Autopsy, Obituary, those are fucking great band names.
Yeah. Possessed, shit.
Possessed, Monstrosity. That's all good shit. So people are, and even
Malevolent Creation. I remember when I saw Malevolent Creation, I was like, wow, Malevolent Creation. That's 2 words that go together, but shouldn't.
Yeah, great band name.
Deicide was a great band name. That's a fucking great band name. And that's
I remember people kept saying, what's Decide? I'm like, no, it's right, because you look at the cassette and your brain doesn't tell you, it says Deicide.
And then you get the cassette and it says The Killing of Jesus Christ. You're and at that age, when you're 13 or 14, you're like, oh shit. How did they find that fucking name?
That ruined me. That first record is what turned me from singing Tom Array and King Diamond to death metal, because I would come home when nobody was home and just sing like that.
Did you like that first record at all, Don? I'm afraid that. Did you like the first Deicide record?
I don't ever recall I've listened to it in the past, because Justin Harville from Hell's Headbangers, Deicide's one of
huge Deicide fan. Huge Deicide fan, yeah.
And so he kind of makes me want to learn more about I guess popular bands. So I have listened to it recently, and I do. I love Glenn Benton's voice, where he does the low and he does a real high stuff too. Really great music. It just back to probably, if I would have heard it was that 89? I think was the first
90.
90.
90, yeah.
It would have maybe meant more to me. But yeah, and same with like he shoves Cannibal Corpse down my throat all the time, and it's not that I never listen to Cannibal Corpse, but now I'm listening to it with his ears because he gets so excited about it,
Right.
and so I listen to it again, and yeah, so
I think it's a Florida thing too for us because DSI was from here, so
yeah,
it was pushed a little more.
sure,
And
oh, absolutely, yeah,
and again, I was raised Catholic. Seems like to be a northern New Jersey, Pennsylvania thing. And I did my confirmation, and that was it for me.
oh, so that's why you knew what I was talking about.
You
I
realize
did.
what a
I
crock
did.
of
That's why
shit
I
it
was
is very
nodding.
young.
That's why I was nodding. But I remember going to shit. I don't even remember what Sam Goodies in the mall, and my mom gave me some money, and I remember coming out with Venom, Black Metal, and Hell Awaits. And I remember she said to let me see the bag, and she opened it, and she saw the cup. I bought the LP of Venom, so it had the giant pentagram and that, and then of
Right there,
course the Hell Awaits cassette with the fire, and then she's like, "Oh my god," because she bought me the Motley Crue, but they didn't think anything of the pentagram because it
hmm
said, shout at the devil. That's what they saw, so they thought, "Oh, we're that was good on them to do that," because a lot of parents probably didn't think it was a bad idea.
It was going to be called Shout with the Devil, and the label
Right.
actually had them change the name of it because they were afraid it was going to be too satanic. I
Exactly.
read.
So see
Yeah,
what happened? It twisted. But
but
yeah, I can recall, Glenn and his message, the
it
all
was
the
fucking
lyrics on there,
clear.
and I was just like, yeah, oh yeah, this is it.
Well,
yeah,
it goes to Nunslaughter too with this because one thing I love about your vocals, Don, is and the thing with those first two Deicide records, especially, like you can understand what he's saying, and that's one thing
yeah,
that I really love about Nunslaughter. And like I always thought to myself, like I understand what the fuck you're saying all the time, and for me that's such a key because I'm a lyric guy, and you guys have some great fucking lyrics too. I mean,
thank you. Yeah.
like the Goat album, that was like that album I just love. I mean, obviously we're gonna play some songs from that tonight. But the Nunslaughter vocals, you can understand what Don's saying, and I think that's a big key. And that was a big thing with you, and I think that's where the punk thing comes in, also, right? Is understanding the phrasing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we were talking a little earlier about looking at band shirts and stuff. I mean, that's where I saw Metallica wearing Misfits and Discharge T-shirts. And I'm
Cliff
like,
always had that shit
I
on.
got to
Yeah,
go check out who these bands are, And then I was telling Caton from Hyrax. I mean, I knew who Pusshead was because of uh, Metallica,
Metallica.
and
yeah.
then I saw Pusshead's artwork on a Hyrax record, and I'm like, well, I gotta get this, And then I turned it over, and it was a black singer in extreme metal, and I'm like, I have to have this, and I got home, and it didn't disappoint me at all. So it was always a good way to
Segue.
navigate through so many
Yep.
records,
Yeah, yeah,
But
definitely.
Well,
And you
thank
talked
God
about
for
right.
covers. Thank God for
Yeah,
covers, right?
yeah,
I mean,
absolutely,
that
yeah.
that's how I bought my first, which I just saw. I just did 70,000 tons, and I saw Sodom. I remember going to Turtles or whatever record store was here, and it was in the $3 bin in A Sign of Evil. And I remember going,
it's one of the
oh,
greatest covers ever. It's like
and
a
It
then
is.
notebook.
right
Oh,
right next to it, Flag of Hate Creator, and then the Celtic Frost. You know, it just like I was like, I don't know what this is, and I don't know who it is, but the covers look so twisted,
Yeah, gotta hear
and
it.
we're talking $4 a tape back then because they were the EPs. And yeah, I mean that's why people buy shit. You see it, it's visual, and I think that holds true today because I think kids go into stores. Hell, I remember seeing this band called Disturbed, and I was like, that's got to be great. And then I got it home and was
wah,
like,
wah,
what the
wah.
fuck is this?
That's like Meatloaf with "Bad Out of Hell." When you see that
I
cover
know.
when you're a kid, like this is gonna be fucking awesome. You go like, what's
What
going on here?
about the Uriah Abominog? You're like,
Yeah, you're like,
it's more. I mean, it's rock, but I mean, I thought it was going to be like fucking earth shattering.
yeah. Like I still think "Bad Out of Hell" is a great album cover. That's
Oh
but
yeah, it's for Zeta, I believe. Yeah.
yeah, you pop it in, you're like, oh wow, this is not exactly this is not what I thought, and it's
Or
crazy.
even
But you were
like
talking,
Nazareth as well. Same. They got a
yeah, same
Yes.
thing.
it's rock and roll. I mean, I like it now, but you would think that like this is like
Yeah.
like evil metal. It's just rock and roll.
It's just rock and roll. Yeah. I mean, it's totally true. And, and you were talking also about with, obviously your name, which the Dawn of the Dead, we were talking, you wrote King, what, 86? You started writing King from Deceased?
It was probably right around 85, 86 because I got the Evil Side of Religion. I want to
The
say
Evil
is
Side, which was 87.
85, maybe 86.
86.
Yeah, and then shortly after that, their Deceased's first out of town show they ever did was in Pittsburgh, and I think that had to do with the connection that we had. A lot of people from the Pittsburgh area were writing to Deceased, so they played their first out of town show in Pittsburgh, but we used to write and send each other demo packages and local band shirts, and I've been known King for 38, 39 years, something like that, maybe
Damn.
longer.
What, you took him to the mall, the Morville Mall, is it, over in Pittsburgh?
Yeah, that was so. King, I did an interview with King and Justin, and King's recollection of it is different than mine. But when they came to visit the Monroeville Mall, where the movie Dawn of the Dead was filmed, they wanted to go see it, and so we went up there. And my last name is Crotzley, and it's nobody can remember that or spell it. So. Kind of the way that I think he kind of had to refer to me was like, Dawn from Pittsburgh, Dawn of the Dead. And then that was it. And then on one of his packages, he wrote, my name on it instead of Crossley was Dawn of the Dead. And it was my address. And when it came time to pick a stage name, I picked that. And it goes back to, I always like everybody have, Angel Ripper and Quarthon and Piggy Away, this kind of stuff. So it just seemed natural to have a stage name or fake name.
You first used it on what? Impale the Soul? Was that the first time you used that name?
Yeah, I think I was just Dawn on the other ones.
That's a time. Yeah, I remember reading that. And in 90 was actually a big year for you guys too, because that was your first vinyl release. And I know obviously after that you've done a bunch, but you guys did Killed by the Cross, which was actually the first one ever for Nunslaughter, correct?
Yeah, that was on Whisper in Darkness Records. Mm-hmm. And I was completely hands off. Greg was still in the band, so I don't know why, but it always seemed like the vocalists were the people that wrote out all the letters too. And he said, "Hey, do you want to let this guy put out because it's just the Rotting Christ demo minus
one track, right?"
And so it's a one-sided 7-inch. And I was like, I don't care. I don't know anything about putting out records or anything. And sure enough, however many months later, 10 or 15 of them showed up in the mail, and Greg and I split them, and that was Nunslaughter's first vinyl release.
Now, is 7-inch still your favorite format, or has that changed? I remember back.
I don't know. I know it has greatly fallen out of favor as far as people collecting. There's still collectability for the 80s and 90s 7 inches, but it even came down to we were doing we had a split. It was Nunslaughter, Gravewürm, Funeral Nation, and an unreleased Goat Lord track. This is after the guys died and everything, and Nuclear War Now was going to put it out. So we approached him and says, "Hey, can you put out the 7-inch of this unreleased?" Because he's a big fan of Goat Lord, and he said, "Yeah." And then by the time it got to press, he pressed it as a 12-inch, and Yosuke basically just said, 7 inches don't sell that well. So it's pennies more to do an LP versus a 7-inch. So he's like, I'll just do an LP of it. And Hell's Headbanger still puts out 7 inches for Nunslaughter when we ask him to, but it doesn't seem like a very popular format. But I always liked it. I back in the day when it was more expensive to put out an album, a full album, not only going in to pay for the studio, but then to have it pressed, 7-inches were a great format for that because it was a lot less expensive, and you only needed to have 6 minutes on the side rather than 30 minutes for a full LP, especially like split 7-inches. So, and that's a good way, you take half the pressing, I take half the pressing, and you push it to your fans, I'll push it to my fans, and hopefully somewhere meet in the middle. But now, I mean, everything's so much is digital. If I want to hear a band, or like just yesterday, Kerry King put out a new single with his,
we're at
and within, I don't know, probably
2 seconds.
Yeah, of hearing that it was out, I'm listening to it, and I'm like, if it was put on a 7-inch, I might never hear it.
Yeah, because how many people do probably buy records or 7-inches or vinyl that actually don't listen to them at shows and just put them on a shelf? I mean, I think that's these days. I mean, I think 8-tracks are coming back. We were saying, Ed, that people are starting to put 8-tracks out again, and cassettes. They kind of died off, but now I see them at some of the underground shows more. The cassettes are back. But
absolutely,
few bands.
And Nunslaughter actually did put out 2 8-tracks. We put out Hell's Unholy Fire and Goat on 8-track. And that's
got to be awesome for you, because at all ages, we all remember. I remember my uncle had all the Black Sabbath 8-tracks. So for you, it was probably pretty badass to have a Nunslaughter 8-track.
Yeah, because right when I started getting into music, 8-tracks were completely gone, and I could get them for 50 cents an 8-track, and that's where I heard Aerosmith and Black Sabbath and Jimi Hendrix. It was all on 8-track, and I'm like, 50 cents.
Flips over mid song. It's like
right in the middle of the song.
It's like, fuck.
Could you imagine handing somebody an 8-track, kind of like they give the kids? I don't know if you've seen the videos where they give the kids a regular phone and tell them to try to use it, and they're looking at it and they don't know what to do. Could you? If I handed Bryce, my son's 21, if I handed him an 8-track, they wouldn't know what to do with it. That's what's so shitty is we've come through from what, VHS, VHC, or what was the other one there? The small Beta. We come through Laserdisc. We had shit that nobody will ever know about. We had to walk around with the fucking Walkman and then the Discman and shit that these kids will never know. Now they just, one of these fits in their pocket, and it's literally fucking everything. Over. Yeah, man. It sucks because like when we did the Massacre record, Century Media sent us all the colors, and I kept them because I'm like, I have I have 6 color fucking records. Am I ever going to play them? No, but I have 6 colors of my record. It's cool, right? I mean, most people would never think about that. They're like, why? Because it's fucking cool to say you got a red record or a green record. I don't know. I think today's youth.
Nunslaughter, you guys pressed us. What was it? A silver? What was it? A silver record, but they didn't play. It was like you guys did Hex, right? On silver.
Yeah, we weren't told at the time that they do play. They tend to skip, and not all of them skip. So it's a crapshoot. Like if you got one and you play it and it plays fine, then it's probably unique to the pressing. But yeah, it's like it's a lot of like Hard Rock cafes. When you go, you see like Holy Diver, and it's got like a silver record there, and I think it was GZ out of the Czech Republic said they could do that, and we ordered them. And we got they printed or pressed 200 of those on silver, and as soon as Hell's Headbangers started sending them out, there were people writing them like, "Hey, my record skips," and then we got in touch with the record plant, and they're like, "Yeah, it's like something that we know happens," and I'm like, say something like. Could have had a disclaimer on there,
Yeah, it's that's crazy, but yeah. So you guys, after and Impale the Soul, you started writing basically what you were doing. You were writing the lyrics before the music around that time period, also.
Yeah, I this is probably 90-ish. Didn't really know how to write music or songs, but I would write all the lyrics out, and then I'd have to try to figure out a riff that fit with the lyrics. So that one was probably about 70% written, all lyrics first, and then I think I wrote all the music on that. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I wrote all the music on that record, on that demo.
Okay. And 92, you met Jim, and was actually Vincent Crowley had something to do with this. We had Vincent on our show a couple months ago, right? So you met Jim in Pittsburgh at a Morbid Angel show. Speaking of Morbid Angel, so Vincent Crowley had sent Jim a flyer for the show when he came with a bunch of his friends, right? And Jim had asked you basically, "Hey, man, do you know this band called Nunslaughter?" And I'll let you finish the story from there. But
Yeah, especially back then, I was kind of gregarious, and I'd go out. Anybody I didn't know, I just would start talking to. And this is I'd show up at shows with, I had I had like BDUs, like cargo pants, so both sides I could fit 5 or 6 cassettes in each pocket, and I go there and that's where I did most of my tape trading, and so I saw a whole group of people that showed up that I didn't know, and I just started talking to them one by one. And one of the guys ended up being his name's Jim Lapucci. He plays in a band, or played in or sung in a band from here called Soulless. And then one of the other guys, his name's Jamie. He went on to do. He's Athanar from Midnight.
Midnight,
So, and then two of the guys from what was Decrepit at the time, Chris and Dwayne. All these people were in 2 carloads that came to, and I think Steve Eggs was there too. Steve Eggs does Pile of Eggs. It's a noise band from here, and so all these people were at the show, and I started talking to them one on one, and by the time I got around to Jim, he was talking about bands from the area, and then he goes, I still remember he would go, do you happen to know any of the guys from Nunslaughter? And I thought he was like pranking me, because I'm like, nobody knows who this band is, and I'm like, well, that's me and that guy over there, and he's like, you got to be shitting me. He goes, I thought you guys lived in the woods.
because he really dug the Ritual of Darkness demo, right? He was a big fan of that demo.
And so from that, I had at the time I had a Sarcophago shirt on. It was a white muscle tee, and he said, I need that shirt, and I says, oh, I'll trade it to you. What do you got? And there were bands from Cleveland that I liked. Destructor being the big band that I liked from Cleveland, and so we exchanged addresses, and we went home, and then on that Monday, I sent him his package, and he sent me a package, and I think we got him, must have got him on the same day. And then we called each other, like schoolgirls, we're like, hey, you sent me this, we're giggling and shit. So, and then from that, it just started a long time friendship. And, he said, how come you're not doing more with Nunslaughter? And I was like, it's tough finding a drummer. And he said, if you ever want somebody to play drums, he goes, just give me a call. So in 95, I did.
Yeah, because 93, you had what? You did the Guts of Christ demo with Mark Perversion on drums and Rick Metz on guitar. You flipped that lineup, and then you would contact Jim to do the Face of Evil demo. Did you guys record that in a barn in Pittsburgh?
We recorded in a barn in Mars, Pennsylvania, which is about 45, 50 minutes outside of Pittsburgh. But yeah, it was literally a barn. Yeah.
And Jim drove down there for that recording.
It was one of those, back to what we were saying before, like he didn't know any of the songs. Jerry and I had the songs written and arranged. And Jim,
because Jerry and Greg came back, right, for the Face of Evil demo. You got those guys back.
Yeah. And so the first time Jim heard any of the songs was when Jerry was playing them for him. And we spent, again, it was like a 10+ hour day of playing the songs over and over to convey the information that we wanted. But it was a long day too.
Yeah, so that kind of started the Jim thing. And also in 96, you also had a IMBD credit for Santa Claus, was it? You worked, what were you, were working on a movie? I'm a big horror guy, so I wanted to ask you about that.
Yeah, so I became friends with a group, or not a group, but a company called Scream Queens Illustrated out of Pittsburgh. And that had John Russo and Bill Heinzman. John Russo wrote Night of the Living Dead with George Romero, and Bill Heinzman was the director of photography. And not only was he the director of photography in the original Night of the Living Dead, he was the first zombie that you see.
Yeah, the graveyard zombie.
The graveyard. So I was working with this company with his name's Terry Weston. He was also in. I think he jammed in Doomwatch for a little bit. Then he had a long stay with Dream Death, and then he was in Penance, and then he jammed with a band from Chicago. I can't remember what it was called. Anyway, so Terry and I we were friends because of music, but I was working at the company with him. It was great. We'd go to all the horror conventions, and it was a lot of TNA films, just girls running around with their tops off and monsters trying to catch them and shit. And Bill and I became pretty close, pretty good friends. And he had me working on some other movies. I did Star of Jaipur and Baskin's Run and a couple other ones. And but yeah, for Santa Claus, they were actually thinking of me to be in front of the camera, and I read for the part, and it was god awful. Like I was just that is not my forte.
It's gonna stick with you forever.
I'm behind the cameras kind of guy, I'm not in front, and so. But in any case, I got to work on it, and then some of the other people from Night of the Living Dead were in the background in the film, and they. The script is written, and they had it was like Helper 1 or something was my character. I can't remember. And they needed somebody to say a line off camera. And I said, okay, I'll do it. So that was me. I said, see you, Bruce. That was my whole line. And then I went back to rack and focus and changing film out in the camera and whatnot. But yeah. And then I was in some other movies, but uncredited because I'm kind of in the background, mulling around, but yeah, Santa Claus Penance does some of the soundtrack for that.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
For that movie. So
okay, yeah. So and so obviously you guys also with Nunslaughter, you guys done a shitload of splits. I mean, it would take like 6 episodes to cover how many splits you guys have. But there's a few I did want to mention because when you guys put out the first split you guys would do with Cleveland, Ohio's Bloodsick. And that was the 7-inch, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Split. You guys also did with the maggot release I want to talk about because I thought that was what did you paid like $100 for like 10,000 maggots, right? For the split you did with Mutilated Messiah in 2007.
Yeah, well, that's actually 2 stories. So the one story is where I bought all the 10,000 maggots was we were doing a show right before we were going to Japan. And we were doing it it was called the Asterix Art Gallery. And so wanted to do something like artsy. I don't know. So I bought 10,000 maggots from a fish bait shop. Like I had to pre-order them, and then they came in. and then I burned a bunch of crosses, and I had a big rug that with pentagram and all kinds of shit on it. Anyway, so that's the 10,000 maggots that I bought for that, and that was I think it was about $100. So for the split with Mutilated Messiah, yeah, I went and I probably only bought maybe 200 maggots for it, but we had to laminate them, and we tried freeze drying them like in an actual.
I was going to ask you to try dehydrating them, right, or something like
them,
that.
But it just wasn't working out. Like it didn't work. So we bought a laminator and just laminated these fucking maggots, and it was just absolutely disgusting. There were supposed to be 200 copies of the laminated covers, and it was a complete fucking and it smelled awful.
I was going to ask you, since the record started to stink, right?
So well, the covers still. The covers still stink. Maybe the music stinks too. I don't know, but the heating element on the laminator just had all this maggot guts on it just going around. And so with Hell's Headbangers, I used to work with them to hand assemble a lot of our records. We we got through like 30 or 40 of them, and I'm like, guys, this is just fucking disgusting. How are we going to finish these? Because it was taking a long time.
And if Don thinks it's disgusting, this guy's had a vest since 1987. He hasn't washed,
exactly.
because he painted the back of it. If he thinks it's gross, then this has got to be some smelly shit.
It was gross. And so they says, well, let's just do 100, get through 100 and see how we feel. By the time we got to 100, no one wanted to do any more. So we only did 100 of those covers. But man, that was a rough record. Yeah.
And you guys also did the Christ Massacre, and what the pressing plant was offended by them, and they didn't want to press them for you guys.
Yeah, that was what a
that 2004 was that?
Was it? Okay, it sounds about right, but it kind of all worked out for us in the end, because where we were pressing, I think it was Erica Records in California, and we wanted it for a Christmas release, Christ Massacre, and it was a 7-inch on 12-inch vinyl, and in the space that had no grooves, actual letters are punched out, and it said Christ Killer in the vinyl, which it's a very cool looking record if anybody ever gets a chance to see it. And from what we gathered from what Erica Records was saying is a lot of their people that work pressing records are religious, and they felt it was like they couldn't do this especially around Christmas time. So I think we got like 80 records before Christmas, and they said, we'll take care of it after the holidays. So then comes January, and they're like, we want to make this up to you. We'll do shaped records for you for free, because normally when you would do that, you'd have to, I think it was like a $200 or $300 changeover to the die of cutting the records of the shape. And my response was like, well, what shapes do you have? And I think it's like 7 or 8 shapes they had, maybe even 9 different shapes, and it was everything like a star, a square, a Christmas tree, a birthday cake, yes. Whatever it was, and they were like, which one would you like? And I said, I want all of them. And they're like, oh shit. So some of them like only have like 15 birthday cakes. That's all they made. They made like 15 on green and 15 on red, and the Christmas tree, and it kind of all worked out. I mean, you say like, oh, it's a death metal band, Christmas tree, birthday cake, but it is for Christmas, and it's Jesus' birthday. So
it makes sense.
Star Bethlehem, all this shit. So I said, make them all. So when we got them, Hell's Headbangers did a really cool thing. Actually, Eric from Hell's Headbangers came up with the idea. We came up with an insert that has all the pressing information and pictures of all the records, so that like if you wanted to get the star or the birthday cake or whatever, you could see that they were actually manufactured. And it came with an insert, but I think there was only 1,000 of them pressed, but most of them were all shaped picture discs of various, images. That, even though we didn't have it out for Christmas, it turned out
still worked out at the end of the day. It's the gift that keeps on giving.
Very unique.
Yeah, and you mentioned like the pressing plant getting pissed. Like, you actually keep a folder with all the hate mail you've gotten through the years?
I do have a folder of, and actually I haven't gotten much. I get a lot of messages on like Instagram, basically saying, God loves you, come back to
we
Christ,
get those too,
kind of stuff. And most of the time I just blow it off or hit block. I don't want to hear that shit. But for a while there's basically it was like the early 90s. I was getting emails from people, probably made up email accounts, because I certainly never responded. But they like people, wanted to, these good Christians, they wanted to beat the shit out of me. And for some reason, there was more than one that wanted to put stuff up my ass. And I'm like, I don't understand.
Well, that's the thing.
What about me? You want to shove something up my ass? I mean, it doesn't seem very Christian.
And I think, and what's cool about you is that like, and I've heard you say a couple times, like, you just don't give a shit. It's like writing about anything. Like say it's just you just don't give a shit. You don't believe in shit, right? So it doesn't. When you write these songs, some of it's tongue in cheek. It's just like what the fuck ever.
Yeah, it's great stories, just like reading
Revelations.
Revelations or a Stephen King novel, or you just reading lyrics and it telling you a grim and gruesome story. I mean, nobody thinks like Slayer is eating maggots out of some
drinking
chick's
blood
pussy.
out of baby.
Well, and it's known that Tom's
like
Christian.
older women, no,
yeah.
And it's known that Tom is Christian.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're just playing music, man. Stop worrying about the undertones. Like Tony sent me your video the other day, and I laughed my ass off.
That's a great video.
I fucking laughed my ass off because the whole beginning, and then when it kicks in, and then at the end you fucking throw the. I was just like, this is a video. This is entertainment. To me, that's entertainment.
I'm really glad you like it, Ed, because when we first put it out, there's always people, there were quite a few like negative comments, like I don't know where people thought like Nunslaughter sold out, we're doing videos or something. And I'm like, I paid for it out of my own pocket, and that's my own script. I mean, there's no like big, production house behind me. But back to Vince Crowley, he was actually the first person, at least that I saw, posted on the video, like that he really liked it. Like this is a really good video. Like it made him laugh, and he said he watched it more than once, and like he got it. I mean, I grew up, Twisted Sister, We're Not Gonna Take It. Like those are funny video. Like it's still great music, but then it has this neat, funny, storyline behind it. What do you want to do with your life?
Yeah, it's entertainment. It's absolute. I mean, you want to talk vulgar, and I told Taylor this on the boat because he plays an Inhuman Condition he's in Deicide.
Oh, the Deicide video.
Like that fucking video, bro. What?
That's right up Don's alley right there, right? Well, did you see that video? Have you seen that video, Don?
I haven't seen that video. No.
Definitely go watch it, man. I think you'll get a kick out of it. It's basically the Last Supper, but like totally like gore film style.
Yeah, Jesus is the Last Supper. He's on the table with Deicide in front of him, having drinks and food from his body and blood. But when I talked to Taylor, he straight up said, he goes, dude, it was supposed to be serious because it came out at Christmas. Mm-hmm. He goes, when Glenn, there's a part where I don't want to ruin it, but Glenn takes a rib and he starts looking through it and peekaboo and shit. And they said they started laughing so hard that it turned into a funny shoot because it became a joke, and that's the thing is I was shocked that they didn't get canceled because I was like, holy fuck. And I'm not even like that. I'm not a religious guy, but I was like, ooh, this is going to, if it like hits a guy that's not religious and then you go, oh,
right.
What does it do to the people that like literally take that shit for every grain of salt? Yes. I was thinking, well, YouTube will shut this, and they haven't. So I guess
leave it to Glenn to just raise the bar just that much more.
It's definitely worth checking out, Don.
Well, what's killer is I read the lyrics because and I love Glenn Ben from the early days to now, but his vocals changed a lot. His register is super low now, and he went on a podcast, talked about he had his tonsils removed, and then went on tour a month later. And he said that kind of it won't change his register because instead of being able to enunciate like he used to, like clear, he said it kind of fried him out a little bit. But still, he's Glenn Benton. It's Glenn. When you hear it, you know who it is. Sure, but when you read the lyrics, I'm going, these are some fucking good lyrics, man. And it's literally, there's nothing about like Jesus and stab. It's all in tongue in cheek. If you read it, you're going to go, I know what he's talking about, but he's not putting specifics. And that's what those are the lyrics. I like the incognito where you form your own opinion of what I'm talking about. Cause that's how I write my lyrics. When I write, it's like, what am I talking about?
Yeah. I'd have to say, so the vast majority of the Nunslaughter songs, I think, fall on that side, but then we do have some that are really on the nose. Like I Hate Christians. I mean,
Satanic Sluts, which we're going to play in a little bit, actually, it's another great one. I mean, Yeah, it's it's definitely the like I said, Nunslaughter. The thing is, what I like again, I love because I can understand the fucking vocals on those tracks and the lyrics. The phrasing is just awesome too.
Well, the
Yeah,
music's really solid. That's the thing
and
is,
no guitar solos, which I forgot to mention. Don,
yeah,
are you good for a little bit longer?
Yeah, I got nothing going on. I
Okay,
got a
cool. Because
tour.
I got
I
some
got a
questions for
tour.
you. Okay, cool, man. Because I feel bad
Starting
about
in a
keeping you, but
couple
I
of
got so
days.
much
But
shit
other
I
than
want
that,
to talk to you about. Does anybody have to piss? This is how we do it on this
I'm good.
podcast, by the way.
no.
Everybody's cool.
Yeah.
So, like, no guitar solos. Have you ever thought about like just? I mean, and I totally get it. Like, I agree with it. It's killer. Have you ever thought about throwing one in just for the hell of it to piss people off? Because I mean,
I have thought about it, and this probably goes back 15 years. Was really the last time I was considered it. Um, yeah, I think when we did have a review of Red as the Color Ripping Death, where the guy said, he listened to the record, and it was a positive review, and he said, I don't think there's any guitar solos on this. And I wish I was there, and I could have says, we did almost 300 songs with no guitar solos.
because your guys' catalog is 300 deep, right? At
Yeah,
least.
just about. Yeah, it's maybe a little shy of 300, but actually now, yeah, probably close to. It's got to be right at 300. And but yeah, although we have cover songs that we've done with guitar solos in it, but actually we did. Um, we just did a. I was talking to Cam Lee about doing a Nunslaughter Massacre split. He was going to cover one or two Nunslaughter songs, and I was going to cover one or two, either Massacre or something else. But we'll have a probably a guitar solo on that. We actually did a Midnight cover, and the guitar player for Midnight, not Athanar, but the live guitar player Sean. We actually had him play his solos on the Midnight cover song that
Well,
Nunslaughter
that's
did.
cool.
So it's really fucking good solos,
Yeah.
But we do have songs with solos. They're just not our songs with solos. And but that
It's
all
unheard
comes
of.
back from the punk aspect of the band and the punk rock music, because there are punk rock bands that have, they might have 10 songs and 4 of them have solos and the others don't have solos. But we were never good enough. Like, I mean, now, yeah, the guys in the band are good enough, but starting out, nobody could play a guitar solo to save their life. So we just skipped it, and then it just became a thing. We're like,
It became a thing. Yeah, it's a big thing. It was never a guitar solo. And you guys did, and I know for you this was a big thing because you had wanted to do a split with Blood for years. You guys did the 2022 split with Blood, which had 3 Nunslaughter tracks, I think 4 Blood tracks. And that was, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, obviously with Jim passing, but that was an awesome thing for you, right? Because you actually, you were playing a gig with them at a festival.
Yeah, we played, I think it was Netherlands Death Fest. And over the past, at least 20 years, every once in a while, we'd either have one of their friends mention something to them, or I would get an email and I'd shoot an email to the guys in Blood, like, hey, we should do a split. And it was always, they all live in different cities, or they're separated. So they only got together to do albums. They really didn't have material for splits. Any case, when we performed with them in the Netherlands, our dressing room was right next to each other, and so I just went over there, plopped down, and just started talking to them, and I explained to them how much Blood meant to Jim. And Jim even had Blood painted on his leather jacket, and I said he's always wanted to do have a Nunslaughter Blood split. And it just so happened they were like, well, we're going into the studio in like a couple of months. We'll just rip off a couple of songs, and do the split. And I was like, great. So that was a super easy split record, because not a lot of death metal bands want to do splits. And even if it was a split, like in that case, it was a split LP, so it wasn't just a 7-inch, But it might have to do with, I figure there's a couple of reasons. One, their contract doesn't allow it. 2, they don't like me or Nunslaughter. They don't want to be associated with us. 3, there's no money in it. I don't know what the case is, but I've got a couple of bands out there that I've asked for years, if not decades. Like, let's do.
I was going to ask you that.
Yeah, it just never. They never come back. I mean, and say, okay, let's do a split. It's like, hey, do you want to do a split? And then it's a silence, and I go, okay, I guess not.
But you like to do splits with bands that aren't just like, you like to mix, like you like to do it with more of some of thrash bands, punk bands. You don't, you kind of like the variety, right? With the Nunslaughter splits to get different kind of like, not genres, so to say, but I guess so, because there's like 5 million genres now. But
yeah, absolutely. But the bands I want to do splits with are mainly death metal bands. Although like Sabat from Japan, that was one that I wanted to do for a long time, and I had no idea how to organize it, and then all of a sudden it just happened. But yeah, a lot of times is we'll have something sitting on the shelf, or it has been in the past. We've got 2 or 3 songs just sitting on the shelf, and then some grind band from Malaysia will be like, hey, do you want to do a split? We can put it out on this label, and it makes it wicked easy. And you're like, yeah, here's 3 songs, and then it eventually comes out. But yeah, I mean, I'll keep asking.
Yeah, that's all you can do, right?
I'm surprised Tony never. Because we used to do plenty of splits with the bands we were in.
I was kind of intimidated by Nunslaughter a little bit back in the day, because I put out the split I actually put out Eat My Fuck, Eat My Fuck Abscess split years ago with Chris from Autopsy. And I actually had there was a band I had contacted that was a popular band at that time, kind of, I guess popular wouldn't be the word, and their label actually didn't let them do it. But I had thought of you guys, but I just figured, I was like, I mean, I was a lot younger and I was working for the magazine, and I definitely had thought of you guys a few times, because I didn't know it was so like. And then I started learning how you ran the camp, over there, just from reading interviews and dealing with you twice. And, I definitely should have for that, because we actually put 2 of Chris's bands on there, because Eat My Fucking Abscess were both Chris, because I couldn't find another band, which was crazy, because I'm a big Autopsy guy, and I think Chris is awesome. But I actually had wanted to ask you guys. So he is right.
That would have been cool. Yeah. Because so Hell's Headbangers put out a Nunslaughter Hemorrhage split, and how that worked out, I can't remember what band was supposed to be on the other side. It was either Mortician or Exhumed was supposed to be on the other side of the split, and they already had the Hemorrhage material, and they were waiting, and whatever band it was just wasn't, sending in material. So Hell's Headbangers was like, hey, do you want to do the other side of this split with Hemorrhage? And I was like, absolutely. And then we just went into the studio, and I don't know, probably 2 months later we had the music. And there was another thing where I can't remember what other split it was, but like they had a split set up, and the band on side B again couldn't get their act together, and then I said, we'll do it, and like, oh, okay. And we go in and rip out a couple of songs, and yeah. But and
the band that actually did it to me, I'll say it, I don't give a shit really. What do I care? It was Belphegor. I had Belphegor and Abscess lined up.
Yeah.
Because I had actually done, so when Belphegor, I actually started their MySpace page for them. I started running that for them back in the day, MySpace, right? Yeah, MySpace page. So, I would deal with Hellmoth. Yeah, I was doing that for them. So they agreed to do the split with me. They're like, yeah, we'll do it. And Chris was cool as shit. And then I guess, was it Napalm Records maybe at that time? I don't know. They just cut the fucking. They told me no. Like after, and I had it all set up, and I was just a kid, just paying. I paid for everything myself, and even then it was kind of expensive to do 7 inches. I got the stampers. I did everything myself, And in the last minute they bailed. So Chris actually was like, I think it was. We already had Abscess, so he gave me an Eat My Fuck song. So that's how that wound up happening, because Belphegor bailed on me. But so it was kind of a bummer, to be honest. But I thought another thing you guys did, which I thought was awesome, Don, was you guys did you ordered the blank album covers. And this, I've never heard anybody do this. This is why it's impossible. Let me say, I have probably 60 Nunslaughter releases, I'm going to say.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, I have a shitload of 7 inches. I have crazy vinyl stuff. Like, I have all of that stuff. It's impossible to collect. There was a period in my life when I realized I will never collect everything Nunslaughter, because there's just so much different shit. And, and it's pretty pricey now, some of it. So can you explain to Ed, actually, because I don't think Ed knows this. So you bought blank album covers, right? And you hired an artist to actually go, and I think Steve, right? His name was maybe?
Scott. Scott
Scott.
Stearns.
And I'll let you explain the story, but I thought this was fucking awesome.
So the idea was we had a live show a soundboard live show recording, and we just wanted to do 100 copies. So there's an artist here from Cleveland. His name's Scott Stearns. He does these, I don't know what to say, intricate, but usually very involved sketches, and it involves like deformed women with giant tongues and boobs and vaginas, all this kind of great stuff, but fantastic artist. So I asked him. I said, "Hey, could you draw 100 different covers on white blank sleeves, and charge me whatever?" And he's like, "Sure." He goes, "It'll take me a while." Well, it ended up taking him almost 2 years to do. It was 100+ covers, and it wasn't just like a little sketch of like a skull. I mean, the whole cover
real detailed,
with all, and it's all the original artwork. He didn't, it's his hand that drew it, and then once it got done, Hell's Headbangers was looking at this artwork, and they're like, this is great, just for 100 releases. Like, why don't we do picture discs as well? So they wrote to GZ in the Czech Republic. The Czech Republic sent them the blank paper for the picture discs, and we went in to a Kinko's and took each digital file and printed them all. We did the backs as well. So picture discs, we did 100 of them, 113, I think. Sent them to GZ, and they printed the picture discs, but the adjustment was off. So a lot of the picture discs had ripped paper in them. So they're like, "Oh, it didn't work out." And we were like, "Send us more paper." So they sent us, and this was taking like 4 or 5 hours at Kinko's. We printed them all again, and we sent it to them. So then they sent us 100 picture discs. All 100 picture discs are different, and they all correspond with the piece of artwork, the original piece of artwork. So you get number 7 of the picture disc. It's the same as number 7 as the one that he actually hand drew. That's the paper cover. And so we did 100 picture discs and 113, I think. Every picture disc is different, and every record cover is different. And it took us, that was probably a little under 4 years to get that release out, the way that we did it. But what's nice is Eric from Hell's Headbangers also did a booklet that comes in it. And you can see all the different pieces of artwork in the booklet, little images of, probably 2x2 squares of all the images, and they're all hand numbered. So if you like, I need 66 because that's the piece of artwork that you like, you can find number 66 maybe somewhere out there and get that piece of artwork. But yeah, that just took forever to do that release.
It's amazing.
Killer,
it's totally killer. And you spent, and the Hell's Headbangers guys, you've known them forever, right? You've known them for many years, those guys obviously they have the very successful label, which is crazy because I think they were buying like 3 copies of each guy would buy a copy of a CD, and like they would get like 3 of them and then resell them and stuff. But you've known those dudes for how many years?
Just even, I would say almost from the day one that they started their label. So over 20 years. I mean, they were quite literally kids at the time, teenagers. They would. They started just all 3 of them. The kind of the same stuff. Patago, Cannibal Corpse. So they found that distributors would sell the CDs cheaper if you bought 3 or more. Instead of charging you $12 or whatever it was for the CD, you get charged $6 for wholesale. So they would buy 5. Each one of them would get a CD, and then the other 2 were for sale. And that's kind of how they started their online distro. And then their first release was Jim Sadist's Spawn of Satan.
Yep.
And then their second release was Nunslaughter Sentinex split. And then I've been working a lot with them ever since. They're not the only label that we work with, but they're only 40 minutes down the road from me. So I can just drive down to the warehouse. And
Yeah, and they always
See our
put out
shit.
they put out killer products. I mean, they definitely. I mean, I remember when that label actually started, and God, now it just seems like you go to their site, they have everything there.
Well,
In
that
'80s,
was their big plan, to be the basically the Walmart of metal. So even if it's not a super popular CD or band or grind or porno grind or whatever the hell it is, they got one or two copies in. So if you're looking for something obscure or something long out of print, they probably have it.
that's crazy. Yeah, it's crazy. And the first, and actually, '87 was the first Nunslaughter bootleg, right? On the Black Vomit, and that was the Ritual of Darkness 7-inch. That was, but and you're actually not anti, which I have to agree. You're not an anti bootleg guy.
No, not at all. In fact, I had to buy that one. I don't know if it was. I don't know if it came out in '87. I want to say I bought it probably in '89 or '90 through Displeased Records out of, I think it's the Netherlands or Holland. Um, and I just saw it on his list, and I was like, oh shit. So I think I bought one or two, and I can't remember who was. Maybe it was Roman. I can't remember who was running it, but I told him, I says, hey, this is my band. I didn't know this came out, and he ended up sending me an extra copy. Just because I guess I was in the band. But that Black Vomit, I think they did 3 releases. Their first one is
Mayhem was one,
Mayhem,
I think,
and then Nunslaughter, and then something else. I think there was 3 that they did.
and you almost put that out with Steve O'Banion's label,
Oh yeah, that was.
Syric,
This was actually before I knew Jim and had like an in with the Cleveland connection. We were supposed to be part of Seraphic Decay, and we were actually on a comp CD and on a T-shirt, and I even have copies of the labels that he made for our release. I think it was Scam 7 was supposed to be our release number, but again, back in the day, I had an artist. His name was John Jack. He drew a large piece of artwork, and Steve either didn't want to or didn't know how, or maybe wasn't even able to reduce it to a 7-inch size. So he wrote back and he said, I need you to reduce this in size. It needs to be exact size so he can make photocopies. And for whatever reason, John Jack was supposed to redraw something. He never did. I dropped the ball, forgot about it until years later when I met Jim. He was just like, you're supposed to do this 7-inch. I was like, yeah, the guy never contacted me again. Like he didn't keep on me, I guess is what he should have done. Or I should have been more on top of it. I just didn't do anything. But yeah, we were supposed to be on, and that would have been, with Mortician and Dercata, Immolation, or Rigor Mortis.
And they put out a book about that label too, right? That's the Steve O'Banion situation was a whole ordeal.
Yeah, I don't think I ever met him. I don't recall ever meeting him. He had moved. I moved here in '99 to Cleveland, and I don't think I ever met the guy. But he kind of took off. I mean, some of the bands say that they didn't get all the copies they were promised, and I think some of the confusion was that he did so many different covers and colors and colors of covers and colors of vinyl that people don't know how many he pressed of what, and it's a very confusing catalog. So people would see like their 7-inch on Pink vinyl, and they're like, he didn't ever tell us about Pink, but like maybe there's 4 copies on Pink because he had the record pressing plant just keep turning over whatever they had a little bit of colors of to do different. That's the story that I got. And then I've people have asked me in the past, where he is? I have no idea. I never knew the guy. I don't think I've ever met him or talked to him on the phone. As far as I know, he's not in Cleveland though, because probably people.
Well, it's crazy to hear that the artwork was too big, right? Because now you would think like that would be like usually it would be too small, but
right,
I guess it's kind of it's interesting, and and also with Nunslaughter, you guys didn't do your first real show till '99 because you guys were only doing like mock shows, right? Through '89 through '91, you guys were just playing like 1 or 2 songs at events or parties.
We dicked around, but we never. In fact, the first time, and I want to say it was at a Bird of Prey show. they said, hey, if you want to go up and play one or two Nunslaughter songs, go right ahead. Well, I mean, I didn't know shit about tuning, and we hadn't practiced, and Greg didn't want to get up and sing, and so I was supposed to be on bass, but I didn't play bass. Greg and I shared vocals, and it was just a wreck. I mean, it was literally there is a video of it, but the guy that I was positive had it, I talked to him about 5-6 years ago, and he knows he doesn't have it anymore. And yeah, that was probably in '88. And then, but yeah, our first show is that one with all the hand drawing covers.
Mm-hmm.
That's technically our first like real show, and yeah. So people were like, "You don't have any earlier materials?" Like, well, we didn't. Again, I didn't even plan on ever putting out a second demo, let alone an album or play a live show.
Yeah, and you were talking about the bass. You're basically talking. You talked about wrecking. That was pretty much the end of your bass plan, right? Because you got in a motorcycle accident in '91. Because those who don't know, you're big on riding. You actually went to Phoenix to actually learn how to work on Harley Davidsons and stuff like that in the past. When Jim passed and stuff, but that's basically was the end of your bass days when you got in a motorcycle accident because you fucked up your finger.
Yeah, I wasn't a very good bass player to begin with. I lack rhythm, so I shouldn't be a bass player. But yeah, I ended up coming home. I dumped the bike and broke 2 of my fingers, and I decided I'm just going to find somebody else to play bass, and I'll just sing. It'd be easier for me. So looking back, though, I wish I could play bass. It seems like it'd be easier now because voice starts hurting. I mean, if I could play bass, it wouldn't be that bad.
Yeah, you also played a funeral. With Beyond Death? You played a funeral, an old funeral home before too, as one of your shows.
Yeah, that was in Buffalo. So Beyond Death has shared some members of Pre-Cannibal Corpse, and I didn't know they technically, I guess, aren't really still around, but they were doing a show, and it was literally called the Funeral Home, run by punks, and I guess as the story, it was a great show. I mean, a really cool show, and we got to stay up where the mortician and his family normally stay. We stayed up upstairs, and it was like a nice, really nice apartment. And then you get to go in the basement, and that's where all the gurneys and all the chemicals and shit that that they used to embalm the bodies with. So it was a cool show. But from what I understand, what happened was they had basically a whiteboard with all the shows coming up. And again, it's not, it's just punks. It's not sanctioned or anything. Anyway, they got a noise complaint. Police showed up. They took a picture of the whiteboard, and they says, "We'll be back every night to make sure there's no more shows here." And
that was the end of that.
Shut it all down,
Yeah, and I have to ask you about the show. You guys played what? So I know you guys used to use dead rats on your shows and goat heads and pig heads, but you also played a show where you bought so was it one of the guys from Midnight had basically started a sound company, right? They started running sound.
Oh, and, yeah.
You played a show, I'll let you tell it, but you actually bought a deer up on the stage and it kind of covered the place in blood and guts, basically.
Yeah, that wasn't the plan. So Sean, who performs at Midnight, him and his brother started an audio company. This was their first foray into renting equipment. They rented it to Hell's Headbangers for the first Hell's Head Bash, and it was Midnight, Shitfucker, Nunslaughter, and Acid Witch. And so anyway, I had already bought a 5-gallon bucket of blood and a bunch of bones and some sheep's heads. And me and the bass player at the time, Murph, we were driving down to the show, and just laying on the side of the road, it's a dead deer. And then he was just like, "We got to get that." I was like, "Yeah." So I threw it in the back of my car. We show up with this dead deer, and so the big problem was the fucking deer. Although it looked relatively fresh on the outside, it had gone rancid, and I had this machete that I stabbed the guts of the deer on stage, and this odd colored fluid come spitting out like a volcano, and it fucking smelled ungodly. There's only one other worse smell that I've ever smelled in my life, and that was rotten deer blood in Finland. But so I stabbed it, and then I was trying to get as far away from it as I could, and it just so happened we were doing a song called "Perversion of Gore," and on the video of the whole show, you can see me like retching, and I'm actually puking on stage because the odor was so fucking terrible. And then so after that, I kicked it off into the crowd and let them deal with it. But what happened with the speakers was that I had like I said, a 5-gallon bucket of blood, and I was dipping this crucifix in there, and there's fucking blood everywhere, and I got down into the speakers and fucked it up. But strangely enough, unfortunately, like Hell's Headbangers had to pay for that damage. But then the cabinet that the speakers were in are fine. So once they paid him for the speakers got removed. New speakers and tweeters got put in it, and that's actually the PA that I use at the rehearsal room now.
Oh, nice. Oh God, yeah, that's fucking
all worked out.
Yeah, it all worked out in the end. It's a great story. Anyway, at the end of the day, and also you guys never put out a full length until 2000 when you guys put out "Hell's on Holy Fire," which I heard you're very proud of that record. That was the first time in a real studio for you guys.
Well, the split with Bloodsick was my first time in an actual real studio. That was recorded at a studio here called Spider Studios. They're mainly known for a lot of like nu metal music, but Jim was buddies with the guy, and whatever, worked out some deal. I don't know, but that was the first full length, and I actually moved. I was living in Orlando, Florida for a while, and a label called Ordelius, I think it was Ordelius Records, maybe, I don't know. But they contacted me and said, "Hey, I want you guys to do would you want to do a full length?" And so I talked to Jim, and he said, "Yeah." And at the time, it was still a back and forth between 2-inch analog and digital. And at the time, really, digital just didn't have the girth that a 2-inch did. So I can't remember what our budget was, but I ended up, buying these reel-to-reels. We bought 3 of them, and they were $225 a piece. So we were already in for $600-700, and we didn't even record any music. And then at the time, studios were $65 or $75 for recording an hour. And so Jim recorded the music here in Cleveland, and he sent me the reels and by that time I had moved to Honolulu, Hawaii.
That's right,
Hawaii. So he sent me the reels out to Hawaii, and we went to a studio called Rendezvous Studios, and the engineer, his name's Pierre Grills. He
did a couple releases out of there, didn't he?
He's done like some of his big ones were like the band Hawaii. He recorded early Marty Friedman stuff. Rat Attack. He also did quite a few compilations called like Wartime or something. I can't remember. And then he did Sacred Rite, R-I-T-E. That was another Hawaiian band. He was early on with heavy metal, and but I did the vocals there, and then shipped the reels back to Cleveland. Because by that time I was moving back. I was moving back to the mainland, and I was going to move to Cleveland. And then we finished the mixing here at Primetime Studios, I think it was called. And that studio's, I believe, out of business now. I'm not sure. Yeah, Primetime it was called. But those reels went back and forth across the ocean a couple of times. But yeah, I like the thickness of that record. And again, there's a lot of punch-ins and punch-outs that had to take place because it wasn't an automated board. So, I think we had six hands on the board at the time. And it was just like, okay, when I do this, push this button. And when I give you the thumbs up, you do that and move this fader up, and just what a very difficult mix on that record. But it's interesting. Some of the drum hits you can actually hear Jim's pedal squeaking because it was like a DW 5000, but it was just old and beat up. And so when you can hear
adds that natural
like,
that now they pull that shit right out of there. That'd be,
right.
Now it's like, now it'd be polished. But we're actually going to play a song off of that now. We're going to play I Am Death, which we talked about earlier, which was actually lyrics you had written with Death Sentence. We're going to play that right now. We'll be back on the Morgue right after this. This is I Am Death from Nunslaughter.
I am dead. I am dead, death is me. Killing people and setting them free. Destroying your soul and burning your flesh. Crushing enemies I've challenged the best. Born of hell, sworn to hate. They get me locked in a cage. Now I'm free, know what to do. Slaughter children, I'm coming for you. Spreading death, eternal hate. Reach for the breaks and seals your fate. Yeah. Laser eyes, screams of fear. Feeling there, your death is near. Now drink the blood from your veins. Infectious disease drives me insane. Seeing you die, watching your death. I worship sin, make your flesh. Death is coming, so it seems. Rape your mind, torture your dreams. Spraying death, eternal hate. Leave from the graves and seals your fate. You're screaming, no one hears. I'm screaming for all your fears. Spreading death, eternal hate. Reach for the graves and seals your fate.
There you go. That was I Am Death from Nunslaughter from the Hell's Unholy Fire. And in 2001, you guys did 3 shows with Anal Cunt on the Cunt Slaughter tour. And you were actually, you had met Seth from the band, the Executioner band he had played with from in 86, right?
Yeah, when he came through on the Break the Silence album, I met Seth for the first time. He was standing outside the Electric Banana, and he had a Hellhammer and a Village People button on his jacket. And I was just like, what is up with this shit? And he's just like, I like both bands. And he came through at least one other time, maybe 2 other times. And he had said, I'm quitting Executioner. I want to start a band. At the time, he was calling it Blurcore. I said, well, good luck. And then couple months or so later, he called me. He says, "Hey, I'm coming through with my band. Can we stay at your house?" And so I've been friends with, or I was friends with Seth from a long time. But, and then we did the Cunt Slaughter tour,
Cunt Slaughter tour with 3 dates, right? You guys did Rochester, New York, Cleveland, and Pittsburgh on that tour. And they also covered AC covered one of your songs, right? I mean, on the 5,643 song EP. What song did they cover? Because I really can't tell.
I know Seth told me at the time. I mean, it's on there. It's just a blur. I mean, the early AC shows were very unlike what AC became. It was. Not quite as racist and not quite as like belligerent as he he eventually became.
What was Seth like off? Like, yeah, when we stand at your house, you're hanging out. It's different that people have this image of him as, like, when you just sit down. Because I've heard that actually, when you sat down, it's like Gigi Allen. Like, you see some times with Gigi Allen off the, like, when he was just chilling, it was down to earth. Was Seth kind of like that too?
Yeah, I felt so, and it kind of depended on if he was taking drugs or not too.
Yeah.
His whole demeanor and attitude would change, and he was somebody that when he when the spotlight's on him, he wanted to be a showman, so he's always pushing himself and trying to make controversy for no other reason other than to just have a controversy. So I kind of didn't get to see him as much because he's in Boston, and I was moving around and everything. But
he was a big fan of that Rotting Christ demo, wasn't he?
Pardon me?
He was a big fan of the Rotting Christ demo.
I think that was one of his favorite recordings of all time. Yeah, he said we were posers when we came out with the next album.
I'd also read once that he actually take a chair. You guys were playing a set, and he sat in the middle of the mosh pit on a folding chair. Do you recall this at all?
I don't recall that. No.
Yeah, I had read this on some fan site that said they went to go see Nunslaughter and Anal Cunt, and they said that he took a folding chair and put it in the middle of the floor, in the middle of the mosh pit, just sat there while you guys were playing. So I don't know if that's true or not, but that was that was kind of the myth that I had heard. And you guys also you mentioned CBGBs earlier. You played CBGBs in 2001. And I was always confused with this. There's two releases. I think it's the exact same set list, I want to say. A CBGB set list and a L'Amour set list that you guys released, right? One with Hell's Headbangers in 2018, and then 2014, it might have been the 2001 show, the release.
There some of the releases that do come out, the labels that put them out, they get confused, and then it comes out and it's like, well, you played this show at this venue on this date, and it's like, no, he got that mixed up with some other tape that I sent him. So I think we did play CBGBs 3 times, obviously before they closed. And it's very possible that there are the set lists were the same. Jim was not a fan of practicing. So when we only had, call it 20 songs, like, he didn't want to learn anymore. He's like, we know enough. And I was like, well, we've been playing the same fucking songs for 3 years. Like, let's learn a whole new set. And he was always against that. He was against rehearsing and practicing.
And you and Jim butted heads a lot, right? You guys were like brothers, but you guys, I had heard you guys really battled at practice and shit like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that a big reason why we had a large turnover was because of how toxic the band room was. Like, it was, looking back, we had some arguments about everything, and it was just posturing. It's trying to make sure that you're heard, and it never really meant anything. I mean, my example of our relationship is we were arguing about something, again, probably something stupid, and we're yelling at each other, fuck you, this is bullshit. Can you come over on Friday and help me move that couch? And he'd be like, yeah,
no problem.
On Friday. It was like the band switch went off, and then the friendship switch went on, and it was like, yeah, I'll come over and help you move that couch.
Yeah, because I think you said too that without Jim, like, you wouldn't have kept going that long, right? With Nunslaughter, Jim was a big reason that you kept that band around for so long.
Yeah, when I didn't even plan on doing a split with Bloodsick. But he was like, hey, I got the studio, you should come up. And it was right before I was moving to Florida. So I said, okay. And then, if he didn't really take charge of learning the songs and teaching the songs to the guitar player that played on Hell's on Only Fire, it would have just gone. I probably would have ended then. Although maybe I would have still been living in Hawaii. I don't know. So because it worked out that uh, in Hawaii, living hand to mouth, it was really difficult. And then my girlfriend, wife, ex-wife, wanted to go back to school, and both of us were originally from Pittsburgh, and she didn't want to go back to Pittsburgh. And I was like, well, if we Jim's been asking me to move to Cleveland so we can take the band on tour. Would you move to Cleveland? And she said, yeah. So that was a big that was actually the only reason I moved to Cleveland, was to start taking the band out on tour. And Jim was the huge part of that.
And you guys did, obviously, the full length. You guys did the goat record, which I mentioned earlier. You guys had what? You guys had done 6 EPs in between that, 6 splits, a bunch of stuff. And we're actually going to play one of the songs from that album. There's a great tune called Satanic Sluts, and we'll be back on Tampa Morgue right after this. This is Satanic Sluts from Nunslaughter.
Yeah! Summon up the house and I'll keep down to me. Laughing at all the grass, chanting Saint's name. Thundering a virgin gun, ripping out of guts. Never of you, net closer than slut. You fucking slut! Yo! Satanic slut! Yeah! Never was just late, spinning on the bed. You have had a way, sexually needs bed. Shaving is the rise, spot full of lust. You're into the hell, but a satanic slut. This fucking bitch took me to hell. Yeah! Satanic slut! Yeah! This bitch of hell starts to grin. She can turn a holy man into a world of sin. Taste the sweet nectar that comes from her hole. First you lose your body, and then she takes your soul. Yeah! Wait into the night, she'll cover thee. You've been a old motherfucking bee. Nothing but a liar, your morals are in cuts. Compromise your virtue and a satanic slut. You wanna fuck me, bitch? I wanna fuck you too. Satanic slut!
Okay, that was Satanic Sluts from Nunslaughter. 2007, you guys do the Hex record, which came out, 17 tracks. And the artwork I thought was really cool because you guys used that Poe puppet. What was it? The guy who did Annabelle.
Yeah.
Annabelle Lee. He did that to 2000. Yeah, I mean, and that was, so you used him twice actually though, right? You used him for that record and you used him for the Dread album.
Angelic Dread. Yeah. Yeah, I really enjoyed his artwork, and I guess he also did some puppetry for Cradle of Filth. Okay. And it worked out like he only had a few dozen images on his website, and our budget didn't allow for him to create something specific for us. So he's like, well, if you want to pick something off the website, you can use it. And that's what we did for 2 albums. And I was thinking about continuing to go with him, but after Jim died, I wanted to make a complete, I don't want to say necessarily break, but I wanted it to not look like the other records. So people knew this was a different band, same name, but different band.
And that was a pain in the ass, that recording too, for you, wasn't it? That album for Hex, because you guys had the issues with the drums, I think, sliding, and you actually had, which Noah comes into the picture, right? Because he actually remixed that album for you guys eventually.
He did remix that album. Yeah, we recorded it, and I don't even know what the name of the studio was. On the release, I called it Shithead Studios because the guy was a shithead. But
There you go.
he again, this is Jim was famous for I got a guy or I got a buddy of mine, and it was it was never good. And so we went to the studio, and it was literally in the dead of winter, and the guy doesn't have heat, so fucking heat in the place. So I'm near the board, and he's got like a big thermo blower heat thing, and I'm trying to fucking stay warm. I'm freezing, and Jim and the guitar player are in a sound booth, but there's still no heat in there. I mean, obviously with them Jim playing drums, it warmed up, but I mean, we were all fucking cold. And you show up, and the guy doesn't even have a mat to put the drums on. So we had to we're walking around this warehouse trying to find pieces of carpeting or something to put on the ground so the drums don't slide. And it turned out like as he kept playing, the drums just kept spreading further and further apart. Meanwhile, he's reaching way up here to hit a fucking cymbal. So when we went to Noah's studio many years later, and I do think that like that record suffered from it. It should have been received better, but the production and mix on it just was kind of flat. When we got Noah involved, we were able to go in and put in the drum hits that were missing because the microphones drifted and it wasn't even in the mix anymore. So we got him to put in these drum hits, and he had all the tracks, and he fixed a lot of the issues that I could hear. And now the re-release or the remix and master sounds a lot better. But again, sure Ed will agree, like you're not going to go back and listen to it. It's already been out. It's spent. The people that like it might be like, oh, this does sound better, but it's not going to do anything,
Actually,
2 weeks. 2 weeks are over.
It's funny you say that because at the gym this morning, my son isn't really a death metal guy. He likes our record. I think there's a reason for that. I don't know why.
You're his dad.
And he also heard
He's the only one that bought one. We sold one copy to him and my mom.
Well, I gave him the free one. But he heard us in practice forever. He would come to. But so there's a band called Skeletal Remains, and they did a remaster. So when I look in Spotify, there's like the album and the remaster. And today I was like, what's really the difference? I was just at 5:00 in the morning. There's nobody there, so it's not like I'm taking up the fucking equipment. So I listened to them both, and it was kind of just the EQing. I mean, nothing really changed but the EQing, which I was like, well, if you hadn't have put it out, I wouldn't have known the difference because I don't know I've heard the record, but I don't know if I would have gone, hey, that's not the same. You know what I mean? But they have both of them on there, and I go, why? Why? You confuse people. And are people going to buy the new one or the
Spotify
old one?
Don't care. They just load it up on there. They
give you your 0.0002 cents.
I got those checks.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm still waiting.
Exactly.
I'm still waiting.
And before we talk about the latest, obviously, Nunslaughter full length, I want to mention Satanic Threat, which I thought was killer.
Thank you.
Yeah, you guys put that out with a 7-inch. Into Hell was 2008. You guys only played one show for that in September of 2008?
We played 2 shows total. The first show went off pretty well. And then I think I'm going to say it was like maybe a year and a half later. The only difference was it was a different bass player. Still a good bass player, but the guitarist, he was playing in another band that night. I think he had something to drink. And the first like 2, and it's only like 12 minutes of music, but the first 2 songs or so he's in the wrong tuning because he was tuned for the other band, and like I'm like, something sounds really off, and then he realized what was going on by the second one, and he tuned it. So that I don't even think that exists, but on that show we did a Unity cover, Positive Mental Attitude. And then I think on the first live show we did the Monkees' "Stepping Stone" is our live song. But I'm actually working with a label now to do a cassette version or reissue of that, and then hopefully by the end of the year, I have a rehearsal. It's the same whatever six or seven songs, and positive mental attitude, and a studio version of instead of Stepping Stone, I just it's the same song, but I changed the lyrics to Casting Stones. It's about throwing rocks at Christians. So
fitting.
Yeah, hopefully, I'm glad you like it. I mean, Jim. The short story behind that was Jim and I were driving around one day, and we were listening to Minor Threat, and he was just like, "Wouldn't it be a great idea to have if you could have a satanic lyrics behind Minor Threat songs?" And I was just like yes,
great album cover too for what you guys did. Yeah, I mean, because what Hellhangers put out 2013, they put out what? How many songs would they put out? The 8-song live set combined with 8 songs.
Live set, yeah. And so I for 10 years I kept every once in a while I'd ask him like, "What's going on with that?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm planning, I'm thinking." And so one day I was like, "Jim, we're gonna get Sean to play guitar. I'm doing vocals. And we're gonna write this music." And he goes, "Okay." And we did. And those guys, the only time I was the only one that ever heard myself sing like that because I could sing in the car. I don't know, Jim had faith in me. And the first time he ever heard me singing that high, like it sounded like a teenager.
Your Vince Neil Too Fast for Love style.
Yeah. I looked over in the booth and he was laughing his ass off. And I was just like, "Does it sound okay? Like, I don't know, And he's just like, "It sounds fine." And so so that's how that came about. But one of my favorite recordings.
We're going to play a song from that now. We're going to play Satanic Threat, Small God, Big Cross, and we'll see you back on the Tampa Morgue right after this song. Why the fuck are you hanging there? Son is dead, you don't care. Mother of lies and mother of shit. Father's fell off fucking man. Run the temple with a spear. This is how I feel. This is down in the sky. Leave me alone, this will die. Why the fuck are you hanging there? Son is dead, and you don't care. Mother of lies and mother of shit. Father's fell off fucking man. Same time forces, lose a Christ just to win. Think it's all come to shit. Fucking Christ, Christ is dead. Christ is down in the sky. Leave me alone, this will die. Why? 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 I wanna die. Why? 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 I wanna die. Small God, big cross. Small God, big cross. Small God, big cross. There you go. That was Satanic Threat with Small God, Big Cross. And now we're going to talk about the latest full length you guys did, which actually, so we can start with the name of the album because I actually heard this story, and it's kind of funny because I haven't seen much red Nunslaughter shirts, but I do have one from when you guys did the Scorn on the 4th of July. You guys had some red shirts for that split, which I do have one of those. So the album title, first of all, comes from a phrase that Jim made, right? When you guys were, I guess, in Europe maybe, selling T-shirts, and you guys had a red shirt, and I'll let you continue the story from there.
Yeah, so Jim was anybody that ever met Jim was famous for giving everything away. Not necessarily even trading. He would just give shit away. And so we're going on tour, and I didn't want him to give all the fucking tour shirts away. So I was like, "Dude, if you want, just make shirts yourself and just give them away on tour." I said, "But you can't keep taking the tour shirts and giving them away." He's like, "Okay." So he ended up making, and I think it was one of our early images, Nunslaughter images, and he printed on red shirts. And I believe this was in the Czech Republic. A guy came up to him and said, because again, it's death metal, so everything's black shirt. And the guy said, "Why red shirts?" And Jim looked at him and was just like, "Because red is the color of ripping death." and I overheard it, and I just started laughing. And we talked about it. I was like, that's a good title, you know, and that was, I mean, it was literally like 20 years ago. So when we were trying to come up with either a song or a song title or the album title, that came to my mind, and I said, let's use this because it was Jim's idea, and I thought it was pretty good. Yeah, so that's what we decided.
And I think it's powerful at the end of it when you say it and you reference him. I think that's, as someone who knows the story or knows about the history of the band, it really, I mean, it's a pretty powerful moment on that song, man. I got to say.
Thank you. I can say this. It chokes me up every once in a while, especially because we do that song live almost every show, and it just harkens me back to how big of an influence he was in the band, and what kind of personality he was. And especially here in Cleveland, we just did a show on Friday. And when I say that, and normally I'll say, and Jim Sadist says "Red is the color ripping death," and here in Cleveland, these are his people, and everybody's they go crazy for that,
Well, even when I hear it, but there's no way for, when you're listening to that song, for it not to kind of, you just get it. Like if you get it, you get it. And I really feel like that's when I hear that song, that part definitely kind of sticks out in my mind. Like, it's pretty deep, I mean, and, obviously, he passed away in 2015. Do you remember the last time you spoke to Jim?
Yeah, it was the Monday before he had his first stroke on Wednesday. He got, he played on Saturday with Gravewürm for Hell's Headbangers. And then he did a Schnauzer show, one of his other bands, on Sunday. And either he called me or I called him on Monday, and we were talking about we had taken a little hiatus. We hadn't practiced in a couple of weeks, and I said, whatever, we got to meet or something like that. And he said, yeah. He goes, I'm feeling. He goes, those two shows were really tough on me, And he goes, yeah, maybe we'll get together like next week. And I said, okay. And then that Wednesday evening, I got a call, and I was told Jim's been hospitalized, and this is probably like maybe 9-10 o'clock at night. So I rushed over to the hospital, and he was in there. He was sleepy, a little groggy. He opened his eyes. I don't know if he knew who I was or could even focus. But I said, hey, I just want to make sure that you're still with us, and then it was. That was the day he got hospitalized.
And you pretty much, like when you were talking about selling your shit earlier, you pretty much like sold your shit and took off for a while, right? I mean, was that you wound up in Phoenix? Was that the Phoenix trip?
Fast, I sold my house and pretty much, all my LPs and a lot of records and CDs. I was trying to pare down because I was moving from a house into an apartment, and I went out there to kind of clear my head, and I went to Harley Davidson mechanic school, and I rode a lot out there. So, I was out there for 3 years.
That's great. Yeah. And, and we talk about with that. Well, so actually some of the material on here was a couple on not the new record. I guess it's a couple years old now, but on the Red album, a couple of those songs are obscure Nunslaughter songs that from back in the day off rehearsal tapes, right? What you and Jim had. Yeah.
So, the one that I think sticks out on the record, and one that was a thorn in Jim's side or my side, was Casket Lid Creeks. Very slow, very autopsy-ish, in my opinion. And what had happened was I wrote a song. Jim didn't like anybody else to write songs except for himself. But I wrote a song. I had the whole song written. Jim would refuse to practice it. He refused to practice it. So I got him to play the riffs, like four or six measures of each of the riffs, but he never wanted to play the whole song. So we never had a practice of it. So me being me, I took those songs, put them in a computer. I cut it up to the song that I wanted. Then I sung over it. One of the past band members played bass on it, and it came out on a split with, I think it was a band called All This While, something like that. And then, so it's a rehearsal. It sounds, it's a boombox recording. anyway, I got the record. I handed it to him, and he's just like, "Why didn't you let me record it?" I go, "Because you pushed and pushed, like you wouldn't fucking do the song." And so anyway, that was one that I thought was a really strong song. It just never got its due. And once Noah got a hold of it, he put in like special I don't know, sound effects, or he did some magic to it, especially when you listen to it in the headphones. So it's way better. So it kind of you kind of think like, had Jim and I recorded it 15 years ago when it was written, I don't think the song would have been anywhere as good as it was after we recorded it with Noah. And so it kind of worked out. And yeah, there's some other ones where, like the song Banished, we were recording a studio rehearsal for Heavy Metal Superstars, and we got to the end and we had like some time, and Jim's was like, let's just write a song, which we did quite often anytime we got into the studio. And I said, okay. So as they started writing the song, I started writing lyrics. So as they're writing the song, I'm writing lyrics. And by the time they got done with the song, I was like, I got the lyrics, and we recorded it. And I always thought the song could be better if we would have had time to practice it and craft the song a little bit.
Yeah.
So we ended up doing that for Red is the Color Ripping Death. And again, I think it worked out for the record.
Well, and with that album, Noah had already toured with Jim, and when he took over the songwriting, obviously at that point, so he actually kind of adjusted to what he knew you guys, like he kind of knew the style that you guys were doing from touring with you guys in the past, so that made it easier with him writing on that new record.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to say he was in the band for 4 or 5 years. Maybe 4 years by the time that Jim died. Yeah, because I think he's been in the band for 10 or 11 years now. And so he was used to how the songs were written. Noah also has a very robust punk lineage. Listen to Circle Jerks and Fear and Poison Idea and things like that. So he knew how to craft the songs the way that either Jim or myself would have crafted them. Although I'll say this, with Red is the Color Ripping Death and even the new album that we're working on, they're going more little longer songs, closer to the 3-minute plus mark, and more, I don't know, metal. I don't know if that's a thing, than the punk stuff that Jim and I were writing. So, and I think it's good. Some people have mentioned that, this song's got some good riffs, but they don't last very long. And then then it goes on to the next song. It's like, yeah, we only do it like 4 times here, then a break, then 4 more times, and we're done. And they're like, wish the songs are a little longer. So we've been crafting songs a little longer.
We're going to play a song off of that record. Now we're going to play Red is the Color of Ripping Death, and we'll be right back to wrap things up with you in a couple minutes. And this is Nunslaughter with Red is the Color of Ripping Death.
In a bit of blood, slashed and torn, bone from skin. Sadist says red is the color of ripping death. Tearing flesh, confusion, blood poured from your eye sockets, inflicting contusions, pulsing body cruising.
And that was Red is the Color of Ripping Death from Nunslaughter. Yeah, and so we're going to talk, obviously, Nunslaughter is going to be in Florida. You guys are going to do some shows. You guys actually just got doing shows with Possessed and the Black Mariah, who you have played with before. You guys did how many shows with? I know a couple of the shows got canceled at the end on the Possessed tour, I guess because I think the bus broke down for them. But you guys did how many shows on that tour?
We did 10 shows total. It was supposed to be 12. 8 of them were with Possessed. So we had 2 shows on the way out to Denver. We met them in Denver and then did 8 shows with them. And yeah, the bus broke down in San Francisco, like a mile or so from the venue. And it had something to do with the braking system. So the brakes just seized up. I guess it's like a fail safe, all hell breaks loose. At least the bus isn't careening off the fucking highway. And,
that's awesome.
So they it was an air brake or something like that, and it stopped the bus, and they couldn't get it. They had to get a part flown in, and blah blah blah. It ended up running, I think, $8,000 or $9,000 to fix the bus, but it wasn't until I think 3 days later that they all got back on the road to start dropping people off. But yeah, bummer that we didn't get to Portland and Seattle, but hopefully we'll be able to get out there.
How were the crowds on? I heard that you had killer crowds on those shows, though. You guys are playing pretty large venues too on some of those gigs.
Yeah, I tell you, I mean, it's like getting to play shows or perform shows with a band that meant so much to me. I mean, it was fantastic every night. I want to say it was like tops was like maybe 800 plus venue, and I think maybe the smallest was probably somewhere around 300. Fantastic shows, very well attended, and in my opinion, much like the Pro Fanatica tour that we're doing, like it's 2 bands like Nunslaughter and Possessed, very liked minds.
Makes sense.
So we got, they're Jeff's still wearing leather gauntlets and they're still pushing the inverted crosses, and this kind of even the new albums, all the lyrics are satanic. I mean, here he is. I think he's 55, and So it was really just a match made in hell, man. It was just awesome.
And Jeff just seems like the nicest fucking guy. We saw him at the when you guys played with him at the Crowbar. He was just such a down to earth dude. Just a
when I
nice
went in,
guy, man.
yeah, because I went in the room and because Robert, I've been friends with Robert a long time. He wanted to borrow my gear and for the show, and Jeff's like, "Go get him some shirts. Go get him some shirts." You know, and I was like, I still got those fucking shirts, even though they're all fucking, tattered and from wearing them all the time. I won't get rid of them just because, it's special that they were given. I didn't buy them. They were given to me from Jeff and the band. So yeah, talking to him, he fucking took pictures. He's just one of those guys that's never like, hey man. And he's so energetic. Yeah. I mean, it's crazy.
And it's nice to meet someone like that because I've actually, we all know when you meet people that you kind of
meet your idols.
I hate to say you look up to it because it's true though. You do. Your musicians, you meet these. I've met many when I worked for the metal magazine, man. Back in the day, I would meet bands, and the ones you wanted to meet, sometimes you wish you didn't fucking meet. It was just like it's better to look at them on the album cover and know that than to actually sometimes deal with them. So and you mentioned on the Possessed tour. That's why I'm not going to be in Florida for the Profanatica tour, which sucks because that's another one. If you ask me like, it's you guys, Tombs and Profanatica, what a lineup. I mean, with you and Profanatica, I don't know if you guys remember, but there was a video. I think it was, I don't know if it was a bullshit video or not, but there was a video back in the day of Profanatica. I remember I might have got it from Splatter God Ed over in Tampa, a DVD where they're like in the hotel and they jerk off on the Bible. And I don't know if you guys know about that whole DVD, which I think it might have been a prank DVD. I don't know. I mean, I've heard mixed things about it, but I never fucking forgot that. But, and I think with Profanatica and Nunslaughter, it really is a great mix. And I know you've wanted to do a split with them with Paul and them for a while, right, Don?
Yeah, Paul and I have talked about it, and this is supposed to go back 15, 18 years. We plan on doing a split, and it just hasn't come up. But the first leg of this U.S. tour that they were doing, they came through Cleveland, and I actually had time to sit down and talk to Paul directly, and hopefully we will get a split record going with Profanatica, but very like minds in both Profanatica and Nunslaughter. I think this tour it's a match. It should have probably happened a long time ago, but.
You guys doing 18 dates. I know you guys are playing in Orlando at the Conduit, February 20th, Pompano Beach at Piper's Club on February 21st, Cape Coral, February 22nd at Nice Guys. And you guys 3 Florida dates and 18 in total. And you guys also have tracks already demoed and written, right? You guys have 10 tracks written and demoed already? Or is it 8 tracks written and demoed?
I think it's 8 or 9. Actually, it might be 10 now because Noah ended up writing both lyrics and music for a track. I was on holiday in Puerto Rico for a week, and when I came back, he'd written a whole song and all the lyrics and everything. We're I think June, we were talking about June going in and recording the new album, but this is the first time that we actually have a chance to demo the songs, and I've never had that chance before because Jim worked very quickly and kind of off the cuff. And it was just like, we'd get it through one time and he's just like, that's it. That's all I want to do. And, years later, I'm like, man, I wish we could have taken that part and moved it over here and switched this around.
I was going to ask you that actually, and I don't mean it like, do you feel like this lineup, so the current lineup I'll have, actually, what is the current lineup right now? I know it's you, Noah. What is the full actually?
Joe on drums and Mike. Mike has been in the band for about a year and a half. And he plays in another band with his brother called Ancient Wisdom out of Austin, Texas. And he's also been in punk bands from here, Nine Chucks Terror and Gordon Soley Motherfuckers. And his big band that he was in, it was Integrity, another band from Cleveland. He toured with them for a while. He's been around the block.
Do you feel like this is the tightest lineup you've? I mean, I know it's hard to say. You've been around for a long time doing this, but do you feel like? Because I know on the new record, man, the fucking drums on it's just awesome. The recording itself, obviously, what we talked about, the Moore soundboard, whatever, and I know you guys, you actually rehearse at the studio you record at too, so it's kind of like home for you, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I can't picture it being a better deal than what you guys got set up right now.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I think. Yeah, I think this is the tightest lineup that we've ever had, and I think that live too, we come off very well. I mean, maybe there's other bands that are more energetic, but I'd be hard pressed to.
You guys are stabbing fucking deers on there. I don't know, man. It's like fucking destroying equipment and shit. I don't know, man. Fucking, But yeah, I mean, the lineup just seems killer now. I mean, it's you guys have the new stuff written already, and you also I know we've kept you for a fucking long time tonight, man. And we really appreciate it. Like I said, dude,
it's great. I'll be surprised if anybody makes it this far in the video.
We get people that do. It's crazy. They message us. They're like, "I just finished finally." We get some people that will stay the whole time, man. But believe me, I tossed out some questions. I was like, But you were also involved with Gravewürm at one time too. But you also are still working now. You have a band now, Tondra, right? With Rob Graves that you guys started tracking guitars for and drums.
Yeah, actually, Joe from Nunslaughter is playing the drums on this recording, and Rob wrote all the music. And then once he's got all the drums. Once we get the guitar tracks back from him, because right now it's like scratch guitar, I'll start writing lyrics and going into Noah's studio and record it. But yeah, we did Tundra 20 plus years ago when I lived in Honolulu. Something to do. I met some guys. Actually, how I got involved in that music scene was I happened to be at Kinko's, and the guy in front of me was photocopying demo covers, and I'm looking, and I think at the time it was Broken Man or Crucible. Can't remember what band he was making covers for, and I just said his name was Gary, and I said, "Hey, is that a metal band?" He's like, "Yeah," and I'm like, "There's a metal scene on Oahu," and he goes, "Yeah, it's real small, but we do have shows. There's a show in 2 weeks or something. You should come to it." I was like, "Great," so I went to the show, and there's a guy walking around with a Route 666 shirt on. Well, that route is in Pennsylvania, and I've ridden that route. And I said to him, I said, "Are you from Pennsylvania?" And he says, "Yeah, I lived in Pennsylvania. Why?" And I says, "Because of Route 666." And he said, "I didn't even know that was a route." And I was like, "Oh yeah." So we ended up starting up a friendship, and then it was like, "Hey, we should write some music." And yeah, and then our drummer Stanley is in Indonesia at this time, so we had to go for Joe playing drums for Tundra. But yeah, I think there's 9 new songs for Tundra that's done. Other than the lyrics, all the music's done.
Okay, and Nighnacht also you're doing that still. That's work.
Yeah, same kind of the same thing. Living in Arizona, I went to a few shows. Like Mushroom Head came through from Cleveland, and Incantation. I heard about those shows, but like local shows, I didn't know anything about. Well, my friend Rob said, "Hey, my friend of his from Hawaii, this dude Keone, lives in Phoenix. You should hook up with him." So, I called him up. We met up a couple of times, and he said him and some of his buddies get together and basically just drink beer and jam out. And I said, "Oh, I'll come over." So we started doing that, and then I was just like, "All right, well," I started arranging the riffs that they were just coming up with, like they were just jamming, And so we arranged a couple of songs, and I says, "Why don't we record this?" And we wrote a song, let's record. So we just did home studio recordings, and they thought my vocal approach or vocal style to that was pretty unique, along the lines of like early necrophagia and whatnot. And so yeah, we've done 3 demos, and I just saw them when we were out on the Possessed tour. We did Phoenix or Scottsdale, and they said they're working on new material. So hopefully by the end of this year, they'll send me some more material, and we'll have a Nighnacht, another Nighnacht demo or recording or whatever. Yeah.
That's killer, because I know you guys had a phrase in Nunslaughter, right? Record it before you die. So that's definitely killer that you guys are getting it done. Yeah, keep busy, because you never know. I mean, that's the truth.
I can't keep busy because this fucker's 10,000 miles away. So, I'm stuck.
This is what we've resorted to.
I'm stuck here doing monstrosity, I mean,
I'm over here fucking plowing snow and raising 2 little kids and recording in my garage songs, But no, man, Don, like I said, we really appreciate you coming on. I've been wanting to get you on here for a while. I saw you were doing a bunch of press. I was like, man, I gotta bug this guy, but I knew I think even when I messaged you, I was like, if you can at least give us, I didn't tell you 2.5 hours, but 3 hours. I was like, if you at least give us an hour of your time, because, I listen to a lot of interviews, and say if I listen to a Nunslaughter, I want to hear some shit, and a lot of them are just, what did you have for dinner, or like just kind of shit like that. And,
what have you been listening to?
Yeah. I really wanted to basically like ask questions that I've wondered for a long time, man. And like I said, you were cool to me 20 years ago. Yeah, you like pizza. We know you like sluts. We know these things. We know that already. We know you like Satan.
Sluts hate Christians.
What would be cool is they play the 70,000 tons and sneak a deer on.
Dude, okay.
And then you're in the middle of the fucking ocean, and what are you going to do with the deer?
Let's mention that for a second. How the fuck is Nunslaughter not on?
I don't know.
I mean, I don't understand, Don, and I've heard you say it too in interviews too before, man. For some reason, I don't. Now, I have a theory though. In about 10 years, everyone's going to be like, Nunslaughter's going to be getting paid to do some shows. Because it's a fucking legendary. I mean, it's become into that. It's been around for a long time. How the hell is some of these bands on these shows? Is it just really who you know? I guess, because how is Nunslaughter not on fucking 70,000? I mean,
labels.
Yeah,
I mean, I can tell you this. I saw. So I think on the cruise, I don't know what you call Flesh Crawler. They're death metal, right? I would say they're death metal. So basically, you had this. These are the death metal bands: Cataclysm, Monstrosity, Inhuman Condition, Flesh Crawl, and Flesh God Apocalypse. Everything else was I mean, it was like, or power metal, or folk metal, or whatever that shit is from Europe. A lot of bands were from Europe, and I'm like, there was only 3 U.S. bands on the whole tour.
Huh.
And I'm just thinking, so people are coming from Europe to get on a cruise to see the bands that they can see in Europe for $2,000 a person? That seems a little, I don't know.
I don't understand it, man.
I don't either, because when we went, the time I took you and the first cruise I did.
Yeah, that was a good lineup on that one.
The first one was Venom with Kronos.
Yeah.
And a bunch of killer bands, and then the one we saw was Carcass, and of course DRI and Raven and
Overkill and
Death Angel. I mean, DRI, a killer lineup. And I'm like, this year we were added last minute because Niall got COVID. So we were called and asked if we can fill in, and then Marduk and I forget the other band from over there
they couldn't get in the States.
They got 86th from the thing. They couldn't even get out of the country. So yeah, there were a lot of kind of like, people were pissed off, but just looking at the lineup, I was like, I don't know. It just wasn't your typical, like, to me, 70,000 tons of metal should be sporadic.
What do those tickets cost?
Yeah, they were like $2,000 from what I saw.
Fucking crazy, man. Crazy.
Yeah, and if you show up by yourself and you don't have a roommate, they put you with some stranger. Yeah, exactly. That's what I thought. My wife.
Go ahead, Ed.
No, my wife was like, so if I go on this cruise by myself, I buy a ticket. Either you got to buy the whole room for $4,000, or you shack up with some stranger from who knows where, who knows what they smell like and what they do.
It was a smelly boat when I went, man. That was a fucking smelly boat. I hate to say it was pretty rough. But Don, you guys have no plans on Europe coming up?
Well, oddly enough, so Tone Deaf Touring, who set up this Profanatica tour for us. This is the first time I've ever used a booking agent in X amount of years. So he had, I guess from what I gather, he's getting a lot of interest when people are seeing Profanatica and Nunslaughter on tour together. So he said there was some interest to have us go to Europe this year, and the we normally work with Martin from Demonical and Sentinex. He does Dreamtide music, and I've been working with him for like 20 years. But this year he's doing more Sentinex demonical shows. So I'm guessing he doesn't have the time to dedicate to setting one up and going, tour managing as well. So anyway, the guy Eric from Tone Deaf had mentioned to me about maybe doing a run in Europe with Profanatica. No dates or anything like that. And it looks like, I think he said October, November. So it's kind of after the festival season. So
you're freezing your fucking balls off. Let me tell you.
I don't know. It's still all kind of up in the air as far as if that's going to work out or not. I want to see how this booking of this leg of the Profanatica tour works for us, because again, I never used a booking agent. And
you guys are totally DIY. You guys have been doing that DIY thing for a long time. Like you said, you don't even belong to a label, really, right? You released your Hells, but you really don't have any ownership. You're just you. You pretty much decide.
Yeah, and sometimes I think it's a blessing, and sometimes it's a curse, because everybody thinks that like we're signed to Hell's Headbangers, and we're not. It's a licensing deal. So Nunslaughter owns everything. All the past recordings, all the records, back catalog, all the images. Nunslaughter has always paid for everything. And so we go into the studio, we just pay for the studio out of pocket, and then try to license it to different labels. Meanwhile, normally Hell's Headbangers takes it for Europe and the United States. And then for Red as the Color, we had a label in Brazil, Misanthropic Records, I think it was. They licensed it for Brazil, but then or South America, but then we couldn't get a license for Asia, so we just didn't care. But everything's kind of DIY. All the shows, all the tours, it's all just usually me and another person, and emails and phone calls, and
yeah, well, I tell you, if whoever misses that fucking the Profanatica tour, man, that's gonna. If you could see it, I would definitely. Like I said, you guys got Orlando February 20th for all the Florida listeners, Pompano Beach the 21st, and Cape Coral the 22nd. But it's a killer lineup, and I know I'm bummed. I'm overseas for this thing, so fucking sucks, man. Yeah, no, like I actually, before we let you go, obviously, because it's been like a 4-hour show. We actually almost had you booked. I almost had you booked probably 20 years ago at the Ritz with Diabolic and Crucifier. I don't know if you remember this. I don't know what the fuck happened to that show, but it fell apart.
First show in Florida, because up until just like last year, I think we've never played in Florida at all.
Yeah, we were trying to put together the show at that time period, and I remember it was Crucifier, Diabolic, and Nunslaughter. That was supposed to be I think there was actually even some posters printed for it, and it just fell apart. Ed, you remember that show? We won't go into detail, but that was was it Masquerade or Ritz at that time? Yeah. But I was totally bummed, man, because I was totally excited you guys were going to make that trip. That was a long time ago, but yeah, man. Like I said, you've been awesome, Don. And anybody who wants to pick up Nunslaughter swag, or what is it? It's all Hell's Headbangers. Is that where you get everything at pretty much these days?
Just nunslaughter.com, and that takes you to Hell's Headbangers site. But I think, Ed, were you in Diabolic? Did we perform with you at CBGB's?
No.
Okay.
No.
Because is it Anton, the drummer?
Antar, yeah.
So he used to be in
Ex Mortis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I met him.
Didn't you almost? Did you try out for Ex Mortis?
Yeah. That was
on bass, right?
Yeah, because Brian, he was living in Pittsburgh. He married
Malone,
Sharon, from Decatur, and he was trying to get Ex Mortis, and he was also in Horror of Horrors too, I believe.
Yep. He's back over there now in Pittsburgh. He moved back over there.
Oh, is he?
Yeah, he's back in Pittsburgh, I believe. Brian Malone.
And so anyway, he said, "Yeah, come over and try out," and because he had the Nunslaughter guitarist Jerry Jameson playing drums. And Jerry was like, "Hey, do you want to try out?" And I said, "Sure." I went over, and a lot of that stuff was just way faster than my brain could handle. I'm going to say 10 minutes in, he goes, "I don't think it's going to work out." And I go, "No, I don't think so either." And then we just hung out, shot the shit.
That's like,
yeah. You can tell I'm not a bass player, but
hey, blame it on the finger now, man. It's all works now. Like, hey,
I got an excuse.
Yeah, you got an excuse now. Don, fucking killer talking to you, man, tonight. Like I said, this is probably I think this is the longest show we've had, Ed. I think we went 3 hours with Arctic Clown.
You fanboyed big time, bro.
Hey, man, I've been waiting to get Don on. Like I said, I told Ed before the show, I was tossing out questions. I was like, there's a lot of shit.
He called me at 6 this morning. He's like, I couldn't sleep. I had to get my teddy bear.
Fuck out of here. Get the fuck out of here. Yeah. But yeah, Don, man, it's been fucking killer.
It's a great interview,
sure, man.
Really enjoyed talking to both of you. Yeah, both of you.
Thanks, dude. See, Ed even threw something for you over there.
Yeah.
But yeah, man. So if whoever's in Florida, check or wherever the dates are. There's 18 dates coming for Nunslaughter, Profanatica, and Tombs. Whoever hasn't checked out the Red is the Color, came out a couple years ago, but it's a killer record. New one probably next year, you're saying, Don?
Yeah, we're going to record in June and hopefully end of the year, beginning of next.
There you go. Nunslaughter.com for whatever else you need. And so for Tampa Morgue, man, we're going to be signing off here. And what do we have coming up? We have Dave from More to Scold coming on February 17th. Kyle Thomas from X-Order on February 20th. And then we'll do a show before that. We'll talk about Ed's last week. And, man, Don, thanks again, dude. We really appreciate you coming on, man.
Fuck yeah.
Thank you so much. Very good to talk to both of you.
You too, man. And we'll say goodbye to you when we hang up out of here. And any last words for you guys?
No, please come out to the shows. And somebody call up 70,000 Tons. I'd love to be on that show.
Yeah, what the fuck, right?
Andy needs to hear it, man. Andy needs to hear it for sure.
I mean, I just don't understand it, man. But yeah.
When I heard it, you guys would have been a welcome. I'm going to keep my mouth shut so I don't get kicked off.
You can go back on again. But,
by the way, you find us. I'll do your job. You'll find us on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, Amazon, thetampamorgue@gmail.com, and the ship Facebook and Instagram.
Yeah, and if anybody has any pictures of Edna's bikini from 7,000 Tons, please send it over.
Bro,
we'll post it on the Instagram page.
Lee brought Mark some monstrosity thongs. So, dude, I got a picture. I'm gonna have to post it on our page. It's him wearing it over his head. He looks like Bane. It's the best fucking thing I've ever seen in my entire life. I called him Bane Van Erp, so it was awesome. But yeah, I mean, I got some pictures for you, Tony. Don't worry.
There you go.
You got to keep them for your personal collection.
That's right, man. Thank you very much. And thanks to everybody who listens to the Tampa Morgue. Did we give the email address out, Ed?
We did.
Okay, there you go. The Tampa Morgue @gmail.com. And everyone, thanks for listening. Don, fucking killer time. We'll say goodbye to you when we hang up here. Everyone else, we'll see you sometime this week. And check us out on Instagram. That's our main spot. So everyone else, have a good one, man. Peace.